a structure.
Interesting.
Now, how do you tell the difference between someone who's insecure sometimes and someone who is a narcissist? So now we have to tunnel down a little bit further, and we have to recognize that narcissism is not a personality structure.
Sweet!
Oh no, our streamer, she is missing.
Yes, and loud. There's literally nothing playing. Niz, what are you talking about? There was literally nothing playing. It was a TTS. Are you sure you just didn't turn up the volume thinking it was like... Hi, Pretty Lady. Hi, Cuddle Bear. Hi, Catfig. Hi, Niz. Hi, Chrissy Bacon. Hi, Amoya. Hi, Thunder. Thank you for the sub. Marjo, thank you. Welcome. Narlol. Hello. Random Bread, CRJ. Leon. Paul Made Me. Dingo. Finster Finboy. Flabang. LaMail. Oh, wait, no, that's from the previous day. Oops.
Sweet!
My apologies, it was my TTS. Well, it was loud. Are y'all sure you just didn't like turn up the volume because there was nothing playing and then it happened and it was like loud because of that? Because I didn't change any of my mixer settings. It should be just as loud as it always is. Jayton, thank you for 15 months. I can't stay on tonight, but I hope you have a great stream. Bye, Kaden. Thank you. Thank you for saying hi, at least. Hi, Dragonator. How are you? Okay, chat. I have a iced coffee hour podcast with the healthy gamer guy. Fuck, what's his name? Oh, Dr. K. With Dr. K. It's a Dr. K podcast on the iced coffee hour. And I was listening to this and I wanted to play Blueprints, so I figured I would stream Blueprints and just let y'all listen to this too. So the video will be
Technically, it's a defense mechanism. So anytime
You're gonna be on a
I have an
podcast?
insecurity, right? So if you take a
No.
normal person, I'm
I have no
insecure
intention of being on
about
a
my,
podcast.
let's say, my appearance in a bathing suit. If someone criticizes my intelligence, I'm fine with it. But if someone calls me ugly in a bathing suit, this is my insecurity, so my narcissistic defense mechanism rises. Right? So then I'll say, well, you're ugly in a bathing
Jaden, thank you
suit
so
too,
much
or
for,
which
what is that,
more
5
common,
gifted?
so
5
narcissists
gifted
won't do things
subs!
that make them look
It's
bad, right?
doubled.
So if I'm concerned about the way that I look in a bathing suit, I'll just
Was
never
it just
go to the
because it was
beach.
on speaker?
So
I just switched it
narcissism is
over.
actually a defense mechanism that rises to protect you against an
It
internal
was? Okay.
insecurity.
Yeah.
And what we call people who have NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, are people who
So
use
you'll have a
that defense
little
mechanism
preview
a
right
lot,
here.
but
Jayton,
more
thank you so much for the
importantly,
5 gifted. That's
their
really crazy.
utilization of
Anyone
that
who got
defense
gifted a sub from
mechanism
Jayton,
is
please say
so
thank you to
severe
them.
that they have difficulty like
You can look at the
maintaining
video there.
relationships in life.
It's going to be
They get
playing
divorced,
audio-wise.
they get fired, they become CEOs, they become
And then we're going
billionaires.
to be
All
playing
kinds of
Blueprints.
problems can arise from narcissism.
And we're trophy hunting on
billionaires
Blueprints.
are
So
narcissistic?
No.
Yeah.
Do you think
Hi,
they have a
CRJ,
higher
how are you?
likelihood of being a narcissist or no? Do you see any correlation?
I think they use the narcissistic defense mechanism and they have some of that personality structure they have a greater amount of that personality structure. And I've worked with a couple, like in my practice.
What about for sociopaths?
What
'Cause
about?
I heard that there's a higher percentage of billionaires, like people with
Oh,
extreme
100%.
wealth, that fit that
Okay.
criteria because they need to be so cutthroat when it
Blueprints,
comes to like,
not blueprints.
people,
Correct. Yes.
business, money.
Yes and no. So this is also where we have to be precise with our language. So when you label
Hi,
someone
baked beans.
a
It's a
sociopath,
peachy.
I
Hi.
think what
Hi,
that
hiya,
means in
baked bean.
technical
How are
terms
you?
is that they have antisocial personality disorder. But sociopathy is a spectrum. It's not just billionaires. Surgeons test highly on the sociopathy spectrum. Psychiatrists test super high on
All
the
right.
sociopathy spectrum. Can y'all
So
guess why?
I was playing a
would
bit of Blueprints
exert a lot of
yesterday,
power on other
and
people, right? They
I
would have a lot
because
of
you have
got the
to remove
reservoir
your
drained. So
emotions
my
for your
current
job.
goal
It's
is to
more
try to
that
get to the
than that.
reservoir.
Okay.
Right? So if we think about a sociopath, the definition of a sociopath, or not the definition, one of the key things that's different is they lack the capacity for empathy. So we have like a fundamental internal check, right? So like if you look at people with antisocial personality disorder, a common trait is that they will torture animals as children. So I don't know if you like I mean I can't remember torturing an animal, but like if a kid is taking a knife to like a pet, that's not common. Right? And so if you think about that for a second,
Hi,
why
it's
isn't it?
Shiny. Thank you so much for the
It's not because
sub.
you have to teach children.
You
It's
don't
not
watch
like
Fallout?
kids
I've
start out
started
doing that and then
watching
we tell them
season 2,
culturally
but
that's wrong. It's not
I
cultural
am not
conditioning. Human beings have
that
an
close
empathic circuitry
to like
that
finishing it or
makes
anything.
us reluctant to hurt people or animals unless we need to. So that kind of circuitry, that capacity for empathy, the capacity to feel
I think
someone
I'm able
else's pain
to go all the way down to the reservoir
is
now.
diminished in people who are sociopaths. There's
Let
a
me
really
see if I'm
interesting
able to go
test for
down
that
there.
too. If I yawn, it's not a real yawn. You guys can tell the difference. But if I yawn, I don't know if you guys know this, yawning is
Yeah, yeah.
contagious, right?
Mhm.
So sociopaths do not contagiously yawn. So if one person yawns and everyone else around the table yawns and one person doesn't yawn, there's studies that show that because you're not tired, right?
Yeah.
You're not. It's just I'm yawning and suddenly you feel like yawning and like what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
So that contagious yawn is governed through our empathic circuitry. So that's what's impaired in sociopaths. So when I'm a psychiatrist and I have patients, so
3
my
months
mom
in,
knows
my
becoming a
boobs hurt.
psychiatrist.
Oh
She's like,
yeah, they're
that's
gonna.
not good. You're going to go crazy, right? Like you're dealing with crazy people, you'll become crazy.
Oh my
So one of the
god.
things I have to do is have people who are coming into
Why
my
are there
office
so
day
many
after day after day,
chests?
suicidal, depressed, not feeling good about their life, and I need to be able to empathically distance myself. So we get trained in some form of sociopathy, right? It's not technically sociopathy, it's like emotional
Okay, well, I
dissociation,
guess
which we
I
have to be
didn't
able to
drain
sit
it
with and go
all
through
the
a hard
way
time.
Yeah.
that I
Now,
could
if we
have.
kind of go back to your original question, are more
Which is
CEOs
unfortunate.
sociopathic? I would say that a lot of CEOs that I've worked with would test highly on the sociopathy scale. That does not make them sociopaths. There's another problem we have with
Give 'em the
sociopathy, which is that
The
most of
bits,
our
the
research
bits.
on
Hi,
sociopathy
Des.
comes from prisons. And so then we think, sociopaths are bad people because they wind up in prison, right?
Peachy
The reason we
stream while
find
at
more
work, can't
sociopaths in
stay but
prison
can
is
say
because
hello
there's some
there.
stupid sociopaths. And those are the ones who get caught and go to prison. So there are a lot of people who don't have
I
a
did
lot
not
of
catch
empathy.
what that
If you think
said.
about a CEO, the ability to
Peachy
close a
stream while
division
at
and
work, can't
fire
stay, but
2,000
hello there.
people
Hi, have fun
overnight
at
is
work,
not
okay,
something that
Des?
is
Work
empathically
hard,
easy to
okay?
do. I don't think it makes them evil. So I've worked with a ton of sociopaths. I really enjoy working with them. I think a lot of them are like really good people.
Oh my god, there was a
but the
hype
source
train.
of their
Thank you
goodness,
guys
they
for
have
a
to work
level
harder to
3
become
hype
good.
train. It's very
Like, so
sweet.
I'll spend a lot of time. We'll talk about, okay, so you don't feel empathy, but how do you want to live your life?
Forgot to do
You
my
ca-
monthly
like,
lodge,
because
but
they
some
don't care
changes
about
are more
other people
noticeable
in the
than
same way.
others.
No, I don't
Mom's
think they're
getting
bad
sus
people.
of
I
me.
think that there's a lot of problems with sociopathy because a lot of the information that we have comes from a particular slice of the population, which is like a poor representation, if that kind of makes sense, right? It's kind of like if we looked at prisons and we saw a bunch of black people, we can't infer that all black people are criminals. That's a stupid inference. In the same way, we sort of look at all these sociopaths and we think they're evil, but we're largely looking at criminal populations. And there's a lot of sociopathy in the rest of the world, which is also like evolutionarily selected for.
If you were to remove your empathy and give the sociopath answer to this question, I want to hear what you have to say. Which mental disorders should you stay away from in a relationship? If you're going around and you're dating, which ones, as soon as you see some indicators, should you just get out?
I say this as from the sociopathic, not from the empathic perspective.
Yes.
I think none.
Why would you say none?
because I think they're far more solvable than people think.
Narcissism,
Oh yeah,
bipolar,
yeah. So
BPD,
I don't,
depression.
and I'm not saying that because I'm a good person. It's kind of like how many flat tires
I don't live
should your
near them,
boyfriend
so
or
when they
girlfriend
see
have before
you
you
can
break
just
up with
notice.
them?
Oh well, of
Right?
course. I mean,
If they have a flat tire, like, you can
if they
fix
see
it.
you every
Does
day,
that
I
make
feel
sense?
like
Like,
it's
it's not a
easier to
reason
get
to break
away
up with
with
them.
They have to
because
also
like
wanna
they'll
fix
see
it.
the
We'll
changes
get to that in a
very
second. Well,
slowly.
if
Like
you're
you do.
asking your
So
right?
it's like
but
harder to
I feel like
notice.
that's
But
you
like
can't
if
correlate
you
the two.
see
It's like,
them every
how
so
many issues do
often,
you have to have
like
with your engine
you
on your
come
car
back and like
before
you
say,
look
"You know
like
what, I just
very
wanna go with a
noticeably
different car."
different.
Fine, right? But I think the biggest reason, if we think about the premise of that question, it presumes that the state is not solvable, right? That's why you would
Yeah.
walk away.
Mhm.
It's
Or
like
it's just
or it's just
a
too difficult,
lot
you know?
of effort.
it can be a lot of effort, absolutely. So I mean, I say this, and I say this because like more based on data, right? So I'm a psychiatrist. I deal with mentally ill people every day, or people who have been diagnosed with mental illnesses, which is a conversation or maybe we can get into. But I think that this is a big problem right now, is that people will define someone's future based on a diagnosis, right? So you're saying like, okay, if I end up with a sociopath, like that's a deal breaker, which I totally understand that perspective. But if you're asking my opinion, like if one of my daughters was dating a sociopath and I knew they were dating a sociopath, I would assess the sociopathy, because I think one of the best things you can ever do depends on what kind of sociopath you end up with. It. If a sociopath is invested in your relationship, you have probably one of the most powerful allies you can have on the planet. I want you to think about if you were married to someone who's invested in your relationship and they don't care about killing people, like that can be really good for you. They don't care about hurting people. Like they're on your team, but they're like very vicious when it comes to the rest of the world. And I've seen relationships like this. And it's like the lengths that, like once you fuck with my people, like they don't hold back. So I think that there's some presumptions there where, and I'm not suggesting that, you go and harm other people if you're a sociopath. What I mean is that I think there's a lot of assumptions about these conditions. Like if you marry a sociopath, that means that they are going to manipulate
Top
you.
tips.
You
So
understand that
is
connection?
sociopath never
But that's not
mentioned wanting
necessarily
someone
true.
dead?
So there's some
Well, he
assumptions we
explained
make about these
himself.
people. And sociopathy can be improved too. Not quite in the way that narcissism is. Like I think narcissism can be cured. BPD can be cured. Sociopathy probably not cured in terms of the fundamental, but these people can live completely fulfilling lives and can live like normal lives.
Is this something that a lot of people accurately self-diagnose?
No, not at all.
How do you avoid going on WebMD and being like, well, I feel a little anxious today, I'm having trouble focusing, and it's like, it spits out like this is
So-
what you probably have.
If you want to stop self-diagnosing, there's one key variable of information which all of the internet misses.
But you know what? Before we go into that, you have to ask yourself, what does the future hold for businesses? Because if you ask 9 different experts, you're going to get 10 different answers, from a bull market to bear market. Prices are going up, they're going down. It would be extremely helpful at this point just to have a crystal ball.
But until that happens, over 41,000 businesses have already future-proofed their business with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one fluid platform. You see, with just one unified business management suite, you have just one source of truth, giving you all of the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. Plus, with real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data. When you're closing the books in days, not weeks, you're spending way less time looking back and way more time on what's really important, the next thing.
So whether your company is earning millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Oh, and by the way, speaking of opportunity, right now you can download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning when you go to netsuite.com/iced. The guide is completely free at netsuite.com/iced with the link down below in the description. Again, that's netsuite.com/iced. Thank you again to NetSuite for sponsoring this episode.
There's one key variable of information which all of the internet misses with mental illness, and that is probability. So if you look at WebMD and I look at something like testicular cancer, and then I look at something like depression, it's possible that these two things overlap. Does that make sense? So in medicine, we do something where if you come in and you say, hey, I'm feeling depressed, I don't just say, okay, since you fit criteria for depression, I'm going to diagnose you. Since we go down the check boxes of depression, you check a lot of these boxes, therefore you're depressed. That's not how medicine works. It's a little big thing that people miss. We do something called a differential diagnosis, which means that it's my job as a doctor. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, I don't assume it's a duck. that's a bad doctor. Just because you check the boxes doesn't mean you have the illness. And so a good example of
blue
this is
box
if someone is
contains the
anemic, right? Their
gems.
blood count is low.
The black
If a woman
box
has heavy
contains the
periods and they're feeling
gems.
depressed, they have low energy, they don't feel like getting out of bed, maybe they have iron deficiency anemia. Hypothyroidism
Only one
presents like
box is
depression.
true.
Allergies can present like depression. There are all kinds of things that can present like depression. This is what the internet misses. Just because I lose my keys, what is the probability that someone who loses their keys has ADHD? 5%. Whereas 95% of people just lose their keys and
So
it's
it's
a
the
normal
white
variance.
box?
So why does it seem then that the default is always just medication? Like it seems as though the medical system is just designed around like, oh, you have these symptoms, so take this pill. Instead of figuring out like, oh, well, maybe you're not getting enough exercise. Maybe you have a crap diet.
Great question. So I think we have a problem in the medical system
Hi,
where we love
Amelia.
pills. But there's a big issue there, which is that we blame the system, but patients are a huge part of the system. There aren't great incentives for long-lasting, significant change. That's like literally why I started Healthy Gamer, because what I saw as a psychiatrist was like, everyone's just taking pills, but there's so much more to, and this is what my clinical experience was when I worked deeply with a patient. Like, you can get people into sustained remission with like sociopathy, narcissism, mood disorders. I saw a lot of great success stories, and I was like, why aren't people doing this? And the big thing that is missing is that, you know, I don't prescribe a whole lot. So I'll prescribe medications, but 30% of my practice is on medications. 50 to 60% will come in on medications. Then over the course of like 1 year, we'll pull half of them off. And so we don't emphasize the things that lead to mental health. We just focus on mental illness. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So when I have someone who's like a narcissist, it's about understanding this fundamental, okay, you lack security in yourself. And the moment that you have security in yourself, the narcissistic behaviors have no foundation and they start to melt away. Like, it's magical to see like what treatment really looks like. And so meditation is a huge part of that, at least in my practice. So I do think long-lasting cures are absolutely possible. That's the information that we try to equip people with. But there are two other things. One is that it's lucrative to prescribe medication. So, you know, if I get, so an insurance company will pay me
I'm
like
thinking 4 to 5 more months and I will look okay enough for me to go to raves again. I feel like I'm in an awkward middle
So
point.
I can see 4 patients
Yeah, it
an
kind of,
hour, I can bill
it's
$800
just
an hour.
kind of like that,
If I do
unfortunately,
psychotherapy and if I
for a
like work
bit.
with my patients, I'll get paid like $250 or $300 an hour.
Groom.
So there's clearly a financial incentive to prescribe medications. But before we start demonizing all these greedy doctors and pill pushers, there are a couple of other things we need to keep in mind. One is that if I tell my patients, hey, you need to exercise, you need to stop eating processed food, there are studies that show that you can do stool transplants on people and you can give poop from a non-depressed person to a depressed person and their depression gets better. Stool transplant. You can also eat certain foods like broccoli and high fiber diets that will reduce bifidobacterium and one of the other bacteria that lead to depression. So you can do all these things, but what do you think the likelihood is that my patients do it? Very low. So human beings don't like behavioral change. Behavioral change is hard for the patient. So what's way easier is giving them a pill. So I think part of the reason that medications have grown so much is because there's a financial incentive, sure. It's also really interesting if you look at the financial incentives.
Peachybunnn, hi, Metal Thrasher. How are you?
Is 1% of the population. But if you look at the ratio of dollars spent on drug development is the numerator.
Look at all my boy
divided
hobbies.
by number of people.
I wouldn't say any hobby is
So how much money are we
specifically
spending
boy
on
or
how many
girl.
people?
I mean,
At the
I
top of
like
that
tons
list
of
is
hobbies and things
So
that
huge
are
amounts of drug development in
masculine, but
schizophrenia.
I mean,
And the
that
reason
doesn't
for that
stop
is
me
because
from,
schizophrenia is not curable. As far as
I
we
guess,
know,
enjoying the
generally
hobby.
speaking. That's what's
You
accepted.
might be,
So if
I
you
mean,
get
I
a
don't want to
patient who likes
assume,
a
but
medication,
if
you
you're
have a
looking at
patient for
things
40
and
years.
disliking
if
them
you were in charge of
because
the
you're
healthcare
seeing them
system,
as
what
a
would you
boy
change?
hobby,
So first of all,
I
our
think
healthcare system isn't
that
healthcare.
it's more
It's
of a
sick care. You guys
perspective
understand that?
thing in
Right?
terms
So you don't
of
go see your doctor
looking
unless
at
you're sick.
them
So one thing that's really interesting is if you look
negatively
at ancient
because they're
China,
associated
the
with like
way that
masculine
or one
stuff,
part of ancient
but
China.
like
So I had a
it
mentor whose
doesn't,
mentor was a traditional Chinese medicine doctor who was a professor at Harvard.
I don't know.
And he was kind of explaining to me one day that in
Like,
ancient China, the
I
way
like
that
cars,
you
I
pay
still play
doctors is you
games,
pay the
but there are
doctor a
tons of
monthly
car
fee
girls
to
and
take care
there
of their
are
family. It's a
tons of
subscription
girl
model, right?
gamers and
Subscription
they're,
models before they were cool. Any month in which
I don't know.
someone in your family gets sick, the doctor does not.
I feel
get
like if
paid.
you like
So
something,
I
you
want
should
y'all to
just
think about how
enjoy
that
the hobby
changes
for what
the
it
incentive
is.
structure. Right? So now we're focused on maintaining health.
obvious
So
gendered
what I've
hobby. Yeah.
seen
I mean,
in
a
kind of
lot of
my
people
practice,
just
and also the
assume
reason
that
I started
like
to help a
car
gamer,
stuff
there's
is
even
very
research on this.
masculine,
There are certain
but
things
like
called
there are girls that definitely enjoy
transdiagnostic, um,
the
entities.
hobby,
I'll
you
explain
know?
what they
I don't
are.
know.
So we have a bunch of these mental health conditions, right?
Mhm.
We've got depression,
I
we've
got
got anxiety,
nothing here.
we've got ADHD. Everything's getting worse. And so some really
I
brilliant
got locked
researchers
out
sat
from
down
key
and tried to figure
cards.
out, why is all
Oh well.
mental illness getting worse? Like, it's weird, right? If we think about like a particular pathology, like when COVID got bad, it's not like everything got bad. There's one bad illness which is ripping through the world, right? So how can all mental illness be getting worse at the same time? Like, that just doesn't make sense. You
Bad
guys following me?
spelling
Yes.
is masculine
So
coded.
what they discovered is that there are
Bullshit.
certain things called transdiagnostic criteria for mental illness. And what that means is
Soren,
that
I know
if you're
so many
perfectionistic,
girls with
perfectionism is a risk
awful
factor for
spelling.
anxiety disorders. It's a risk factor for depression. It's a risk factor for like OCD. It's a risk factor for OCPD. So there are some basic traits which increase
Girl
your risk
mechanics,
for
gun
like all
girls,
kinds of
tool
mental
girls,
illnesses.
car
And
girls.
which mental
Exactly.
illness you get depends a little bit on your genetics or your environment or the kind of injury you have or whatever.
Let me
So
show you
what
some
I
I
sort of
got with
saw
boys. I get
is that there's
dominated now.
something. So a good
I
example of this
mean,
is like purposelessness. One of the two variables that correlates with pornography addiction the most
like,
is meaninglessness
I don't
in
know.
life. So if you
I
look at people who are
I guess
very
it
addicted to
depends on your
porn,
relationship
and
with
you
your
assess their
friends,
sense of
right?
purpose or
But
direction
like,
in life, you find
if
that they
they're
have very low
tossing you
sense of
around in a
perfectionism
way
is
that
another one of
like
these
you don't
transdiagnostic
like,
criteria.
then I
So
feel
if you
like
target these
you can
transdiagnostic
be
criteria,
more
then
strict with them. But I
everything
guess
down
that
the
also
road will get
depends
better.
on
So what I would
your.
do is start to target those, and that's actually what we built
I'm
at
gonna
HG. So
reset
I saw
my.
that and I realized, okay,
Oh
if I
wait,
can give
there's
someone a sense of
dynamite.
purpose in life,
A
it's
little
going to
too
make their depression
dangerous to
better.
pick
It's
up.
going to make their addictions better. It's
I'm
going
gonna
to make
call it
like
a day.
everything in their life better.
So why do you think so many people are frustrated with the healthcare system today? Because it seems like for the most part, a lot of healthcare is villainized.
Yeah, so I think the reason that people are frustrated with the healthcare system is because the system fails to
I was
have
thinking,
a lot of
well, I mean, I was
fundamental
never the type
things
of
that
person
we
to
get
like
elsewhere in the
wrestle
world.
or
So I'll
roughhouse
give you
or
just a
push
simple example.
around
So
any of
let's say
my
you want to eat an
guy
apple.
friends.
How do
I
you go
mean,
about
me
eating
and
an
my
apple?
friends
Go
were
to the
all
grocery
nerds,
store,
and
buy the apple,
we
take
just
it
kind of
home.
went to
I'm
see
weird.
movies
I
and go
cut
get
my
food,
apple
and
with
we
a
played
knife
D&D,
into
and then we
little
played
pieces
games
so I could eat
online
without
and
biting the apple.
So
stuff.
you
I
pay
mean,
$1,
I get the
and then you
occasional
give me
like
$1, and
trans
I give you an
inclusive
apple. Right?
misogyny
So now we have a system where you don't
jokes
pay
here and
me,
there, but like
you pay Jack
besides that,
$1.
like
Okay.
I don't
Now
really
Jack has this pile of money, and then
get
you say,
like
"Hey, I want an apple,
shit,
Jack."
I
And Jack
guess.
says,
I don't know.
"You
They
know what?
don't
Oranges are just
they
as
treat
good."
me like a girl.
So according to me, oranges are just as good as apples. And by the way, they only cost 50 cents. So instead of you pay him $1 and you want an apple, he comes over to me and he says, "Give me an orange." And I say, "Okay." He gives
Equal
me 50
good?
cents. He
Question
keeps 50
mark.
cents and he gives you an
Yes.
orange.
Well, for me,
This is one of the problems. Now, if you're unhappy with this, you can't get rid of Jack because Jack is determined by your employer. You don't get to choose who makes your healthcare decisions.
I need
Why is
different
that
friends.
system even
I
in
mean,
existence? It
that's
seems
what
to
I
me
was kind of
like
going to say,
it
but
would
like
make sense to
sometimes
cut
when
out
you
the
tell people,
middleman
"Oh, you
and
probably
just
need
say, "Hey,
different
I'm gonna
friends,"
pay
they're like,
out
"Well,
of
fuck
pocket for
you.
this,
I
and
like
my
my
cost is
friends."
gonna
And
be
it's like,
1/10."
well,
There was
you
a
can't
great
really help
example of
a person in
TikTok
that
that went viral.
scenario.
I'm sure
But
you've seen it about the
if
guy who was calling for
your
an
friends are
ambulance
like
and
genuinely
said, "You
being
got a bill for
assholes, and like you're telling
$1,600."
them
And they said,
like,
"Well,
"Hey,
if
this
you don't have
sucks,"
insurance, the bill's
like
only going to be $300."
Yeah.
And
dead
he
end rooms
says,
are more
"Well,
common
I
today.
have insurance, but
And
I
then I
don't
get
want
a
to pay the
key,
1600. Okay, well, you
and a
have to
pair of
pay
chests
that
has been
because
added
you
to the
have
entrance
insurance.
hall.
But if you don't
Interesting.
have insurance, it's 300. He says, "Well, why do I need insurance? I'd rather
Can
just
I
pay the 300."
cancel my insurance
Yeah.
right now and then delay the
cancel
bill
it.
and then
Yeah.
come back and be like, "No, you can't."
Laboratory.
Like I was kind of saying, the
Hello.
reason it's messed up is because normally when you have a customer who's unsatisfied, you can shop around for prices before you buy something. You can change the store that you go to. You can't do any of that stuff in healthcare, right? Because what is the cost of an ambulance ride? No one knows.
Mhm.
And you don't get cost estimates before you do anything, right? Because no one knows what the cost is. And all of these layers of like obfuscation are 100% on purpose. Like they do that on purpose, right? So that no one knows. So you can't make informed decisions. You can't make your own choices. Like it's messed up. So that's why people are unhappy. The other thing to keep in mind is that, by the way, the person that Jack needs to convince is not you, right? It's your employer. So what happens is Jack goes to your boss who has an HR department with 5,000 employees. And Jack puts on a pitch and says, "Hey, we're going to deliver great healthcare and it's going to save you guys 20 cents on the dollar. You guys are paying $1,000 per employee for health insurance right now. If you take our plan, you're going to pay $800. That means $200
Friends should get
savings per
sandwiches with
employee.
you.
And then your employer
Yeah.
is like, fantastic. And if someone at
Sandwiches.
your employer is thinking to themselves like, hey, we need to make more money, we're trying to increase profit. They have an
Go
HR
that
department
way.
that has KPIs, right? They're operating on that. So then
I'll take the
that
storeroom.
makes an agreement with your employer. You get very little say in it. You have to sign up for this insurance. The basic
Oh, shit,
problem
a
here is
shovel.
that there is nothing like
Hello.
a free market system. There's no system of feedback if something goes wrong.
Why does this even exist?
Great question. So this goes back to in the United States.
Yeah.
In Great Depression is the reason. So in the Great Depression, they had some kind of, I don't remember the 100% details, but they had some kind of thing where wages were controlled in some ways. This is when employers found a loophole, which is that if I can't pay my employees more, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give them benefits. I'm going to give them retirement. I'm going to give them health insurance. I'm going to give them life insurance. This is literally where our current insurance system was born, because prior to this, it wasn't like this. There was a fixture on wages, and then employers started offering benefits. Once one
Mine
employer
make
started
pervy
doing
jokes
it, then
and get
everyone has to
grabby, so
compete.
I'd say they
Now, this
aren't
guy's offering
friends.
health insurance. Now,
I mean,
love
if you're
offering
being
health insurance too.
assaulted by
Once all
friends
the
during a
employers started offering
transition,
health
like,
insurance, it no
I mean,
longer
that's kind of
became
fucked.
an individual person purchasing your
Personally, I
insurance.
think that's a
Normally,
little
insurance
fucked.
is not something you utilize on a daily basis, right? The idea of insurance is it's a rare event, but somehow insurance has become baseline for healthcare.
But that's
This
up
is
to
kinda
you
how
to
it happened.
determine.
So then what happened is you have a bunch of people who have health insurance, and then there were other evolutions, like
Hi,
a health
Eva.
insurance company now has like a contract with a
What?
particular clinic where they will take their patients and then they
Hold on,
get paid a
chat.
certain amount. So then
Okay, I'm back. Just more. Yeah, everybody's transition is going to be very unique to them and their circumstances within their transition. It's really hard for me to give advice to someone who has a very different life than I do, and
all kinds of weird negotiations start happening.
and has circumstances within their life that I'm unaware of, right? Like, I'm only aware of what you tell me, which leaves out a lot of context. So like it's kind of hard to give advice or like talk and tell you like what you should or shouldn't do in terms of things, because like I had a very different experience. Um but yeah, I mean, Generally speaking, if your friends are being dicks and treating you bad and like groping you and stuff, like that's fucked, and I would not want those as my friends. Anyway,
happening between providers like doctors' offices and insurance companies, and then insurance companies and employers, and then employers to a person. But the connection between the patient and the doctor
Hi,
has
Peachy.
like two
One
financial
more
middle
month to
steps in the way.
years.
And each
hi,
of those people
Dingo.
has
Thank
their
you for
own
the
financial incentives.
35
Your employer,
months. Oh
if they
my
can
god.
save $100 on your health insurance, they make $100. So they're not incentivized to provide the best insurance for you. The insurance provider is incentivized to deliver the least amount of care possible and charge the highest premiums, right? If they're behaving in a fiduciary way. And I even saw this firsthand. I was in a meeting once, which I'd taken with a major investment bank, and what they were looking to invest in is something called a PPM model, which is like I think it means like payer per month or something like that. So what they're looking for is companies that will go to these large companies like Google, and they'll say, we'll provide you healthcare for your employees. You have 1,000 employees, we'll charge you $100 a
The
month
PP model.
to take care of your employees. And then the interesting thing about that company is invested in providing the littlest care possible, right? So if I'm on the hook, if I have to take care of 1,000 people, and you're paying me a flat monthly fee, regardless of whether I do anything or not. Y'all following me? What that means is if no one needs healthcare, then it's straight profit. So this bank was like, yeah, if you're interested in doing that model, we'd love to talk to you. And I was like, wait, let me understand this. So you guys are looking to invest in companies that provide as little healthcare as possible. And they were like, yes. That's what, because then it's 100% margin. If no one gets helped, then it's 100% margin.
How do you think that Luigi situation has changed the view of healthcare? Do you think that's going to make a long-standing impact?
I don't think
Fuck.
it changed the situation.
It's
I
a
think
dead
all it did
end.
was raise awareness about how bad the situation is, but I'm not even sure what kind
Favorite
of
wood
policy
type in
changes we'll see
Minecraft?
from that. Right? Like, it's not clear to me that that's going to change anything.
They're probably just not announcing where they're going to be holding their meetings anymore. Is realistically the big change.
I used to
Sure,
really
so there
like
may be,
birchwood,
kind of safety issues
but
there.
I think there's like a new
Um,
purple wood, isn't
but I
there?
mean, I think the system has
I think
been
that looks cool.
messed up for a really long time.
I haven't played Minecraft in a
And
while.
this is, I think, where people really like to demonize, like, one piece of the equation, right? So I
One
don't think
Piece?
pharma companies are evil. I don't even think insurance companies are evil. I think like the insurance company exists to do a certain thing, right? So if you look at it from the perspective of the insurance company,
I'm a
it makes
dark oak
perfect
kind of
sense.
person. Dark oak is good.
So
I
think
like
this
dark
is a
oak
situation where
with
you've got four
birchwood
different players that are
because then
all
you get
involved.
like
You have
the
the patient.
a really
The
strong
patient
contrast.
wants to get as much care as possible, paying as little as possible. Arguably, I think insurance companies could be the best player here because they're really the only ones that are incentivized to keep patients healthy. This is what's really cool about insurance companies. A lot of them are very pro-preventive care. So if they can give you a gym membership that prevents a heart attack, they make money. So I don't think insurance companies are necessarily evil, which I know a lot of people think they are. I think some of them are quite bad. But so you've got the patient who wants one thing, the insurance company wants another thing, the employer who wants another thing, and the doctor who wants another thing. So I think you just have four, and that's the problem is in a normal transaction, you just have two people. So achieving an equilibrium there is like way easier.
How would you change that? What would you do?
I mean, so I am doing something. So I don't know how to change the system because I think at this point there are so many things that are entrenched. But I think that the understanding the system, that's part of the reason why we built HG outside of the healthcare system. So we want to be beholden to the people who give us money. That's the only person. That's why we haven't taken $1 of investment. And we get offers all the time. But like, because the reason is the moment that I take someone's money, right? People say, oh, you can grow 5 times as fast if you take $5 million today. But the moment that I do that, now my loyalty is divided. Now someone's in it for the money, which means that their influence on our company is also going to be like money based, right? They don't care necessarily about the people that we're serving. So what I really like about our model is we operate outside of the healthcare model. because we don't provide healthcare. And a big part of that is also like when you say, what would I change? I don't know how to change that entrenched system.
Yeah, that's
But what
why
I
a lot of
think we
trans
can
people
do
like
to
online
improve people's
spaces.
health, which
It's
is
just easier
absolutely
to
what I'm
find
focused
people.
on, is by teaching them all of the things that will help them like improve their mental health. So if you are narcissistic, if you have NPD, you can do a shunya meditation, which will help you with that. If you're
Hi,
someone who's
Ramosh.
struggling
How are
with burnout,
you?
that's not even a diagnosis. The average therapist gets 0 hours of training in burnout, even though 83% of software developers in the UK are burnt out. The interesting thing is that there's a lot of progress that can be made if you just help people the way that they need to be helped.
I'm
I don't know how
okay.
else to put it,
Well, that's good.
right? So that's why
It's
we
good to
build
be
the
okay
things that
than
we build.
bad.
All these questions that y'all are asking me about, how do you know if you're depressed or not? Literally, like I made a guide to depression where the second or the third video after the intro is there are two types of depression. There's something called pathologic depression, which is an illness, and there's something called congruent depression. Are you depressed because your brain is messed up and you have a cognitive bias and you're not looking at the world in the right way? Or are you depressed because your life genuinely sucks? And there are two pathways to fixing those problems. And the biggest problem that we have right now is that since I'm depressed, I go to a psychiatrist, I get prescribed a pill. That doesn't help with unhappiness. It only helps with mood disorders. So I think that there's a lot of stuff like what I would do to, I mean, that's what I do. Like, how to fix the insurance system? Like, I don't know, man. I think like there are problems with socialized medicine. You know, there's problems with single payer systems.
We got a
like, there are
sail
problems with
and a
all of the
key.
existing structures. It's not clear to me that any of those are like the right answer. I think it's just way easier to like teach people how their mind works, give them a high level of expertise to understand what depression is, what trauma is, how to shape you, and equip them with the tools to like make the changes in their own life.
In terms of making changes in their own life, how do people self-sabotage? What are the most common traits that you've seen with that?
You know, one of the biggest sources of self-sabotage is giving into yourself. So I'll give you a simple example. So I had a patient who had a very traumatic engagement. So they were engaged to someone, they discovered thankfully before they got married, the person was cheating, living a double life. So they were engaged to
the
someone
people bullied her to the
who
point she
faked a
deleted her
career.
Facebook and
So
quit her
this
job.
person would leave their house every
I'm
morning,
sorry to hear that.
travel to their
That's
parents'
really
place,
sad.
spend the day scrolling their phone at their parents' place, and then would come home. And money entered their bank account every month from their parents. And the family's complicity in it, this person was pretending to be a doctor. So, like, you know, so they went to a different country for medical school and they didn't really pass. And the family just kept it up. This is crazy.
Wow.
So this person is now traumatized, has a lot of trust issues. Then what happens is they get engaged again, thankfully, or not. And then they start to get paranoid about their partner. So they start checking their phone. But something interesting happens when they don't trust their partner and you check their phone, you give into the anxiety. That relieves things temporarily. But how did your anxiety get relieved in that situation? What was the behavior that led to an improvement in your symptoms?
Fed into it.
100%. Right? So now the way I manage my anxiety is by looking through your texts. So what happens over time is when we give into problems like anxiety,
Since the
we
bar
only
orders
feed
to
them and
charge
they
more
grow
her
bigger
husband's
over time.
trying to said I
Right? And
found
you
my
guys
brother
kind
was
of, like,
gay
I'm
and
sure y'all
marrying
have
my
had these
best friend.
experiences of someone who like pushes your boundaries. And if you give them an inch, they're going to take an inch more. So your anxiety is going to function the same way. I think the biggest mistake that people make with mental illness is that the things that we do to fix our problems
I don't get
are
it.
often the exact same things that perpetuate our problems. So this is a behavior that
Wait,
was
get the pump
adaptive
room?
and then
Stay
becomes
here.
bad.
Kiss each
How
other.
much can you realistically
Good
change
Girls
about yourself
Dungeon.
personality?
Hello,
I
welcome.
think
Insert
90%
clever raid message here.
can be changed. And
Hi,
understand that
Ensign
you have to
Chris. Hi,
understand what
Pastor Van. Hi,
personality is.
Mischievous. Hi, Merc.
So what is
Welcome
personality?
in.
I think a lot of it
We
is
are
just
trophy
this
hunting
temperament
on
that
Blueprints,
can often be
and
something you're born with. It just
we're also
I
would say it's
watching
like
a
a
iced coffee
define it.
hour
Define
podcast with Dr.
personality.
K.
I would say it's a
So feel
demonstration
free
of your
to
character.
listen
What's your character?
I would say
to
like
Dr.
the
K and to
biology
listen
that you're born with, similar
to
to
me play
you know, if you're born
games,
with
I
allergies,
suppose.
then they're really only on set with a stressor. And character is something where it's kind of like you're born predisposed towards a certain way, and then it's
So let's start by understanding, right? So like, I think
Who's the
people- we
official
don't do
owner
this.
of the
This is why I
Good
love
Girls?
podcasts like this and making content. So personality is three things, like literally. And
Is that a
technically
question
and
for me?
scientifically, it is
Hi,
three
PG.
things.
Hi, Good
It is
Girls
the way that you
Dungeon.
perceive information, the way that you react, and like
I
your
appreciate the
internal
raid. It's
reaction,
very sweet.
and then your
Welcome.
behavior. That's all personality is, like literally. So I'll give you all an example. Let's say that someone walks in the door right now and says, I'm going to give you $1 million to cluck like a chicken. So this is a uniform stimulus, right? All three of us are seeing the same stimulus. Stimulus is the same. The way we perceive that stimulus will be different. I will think to myself, oh my God, I've been praying to God for so long that he give me $1 million and this is the opportunity. This is everything that I've been praying for. Thank God. You will look at this and think, who the hell is this? And you will look at this and think, what's the scam? What's the catch? Do y'all see how one thing exists? It's the same thing, but the three of us perceive it in different ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So narcissistic personality. Oh, hey, are you feeling okay? You don't look the best. How dare you comment on my appearance? The intervention is the same. When a non-narcissist, when someone says, hey, are you doing okay? A non-narcissist is like, wow, this person cares about me. A narcissist is like, what's wrong? What's wrong with my face? Why are you saying that? What you guys see what I mean?
Yeah.
So literally the way you perceive information is the first part of personality. Then once you have a perception, there's an internal change. So how do you react to it?
No,
This
no,
person is
sorry,
trying to
G.
scam
There
me.
is
Do I
the
wanna
official
give in to the scam?
owner.
Do I
All of
wanna
us
report
went
it to the
earlier on the
police? Do I
stream.
feel good about
I
it?
need
Do
to
I
read
not
it
feel
all
good about
together.
it? That's the second stage. And then the third stage is how we react. So at some point, a human being will, based on their perception and based on their internal reactions, will take an action. So I'll say, yes, give me the $1 million.
Where's that?
You'll say, why didn't I think of
I
this
am
first?
confused.
And you'll say, screw you, right? So does that kind of make sense? So if we look at someone and we say, okay, oh, look at this person's personality, is they have such stalwart character. And why do we say that? You're right? It's character, but character is the way you respond to situations, is the way you perceive situations, right? So when someone has strong character, when life gives them setbacks, they're setbacks, not failures. Does that make sense? So they're going to keep going forward. So personality is literally these three things. Y'all with me? So then the question is, can we change those things? And the answer is 100% yes. So we have techniques of removing cognitive bias, right? So you can train your mind to see things as they are. So this is a really interesting aside. If you look at researchers who win the Nobel Prize in medicine, there is one trait that they have in common, which is that they see the world as it is. That's the most important thing to win a Nobel Prize. So what happens, how do you win a Nobel Prize? You run an experiment, and common sense says the interpretation is one thing, but you're able to shed common sense and see, holy crap, this experiment is showing that light is both a particle and a wave. This is something that is not possible, right? Something that is a particle or it's
Have
a
a good
wave.
night,
You can't
great
be both,
stream.
but the
Peachy,
experiment
good
says it's both,
night,
and
good
then you say
girls.
yes.
Good
You're able to
night.
simply see
Thank you
reality
again
as
for
it
the
is.
raid. I hope you had a good
That's
stream
how
as
you win a Nobel
well.
Prize.
Sleep
Interestingly
well.
enough, Dalai Lama also has a great segment about the hardest thing to do in the world is to see the world as it is. So what happens in life, the way our personality develops, is we accrue this emotional baggage that then colors our perception. So there's a process to remove that perceptual coloring. Then we have our internal reactions, which can also be modified, strengthened. Even though I feel angry in this moment, I can change the way that I see that anger. I can have a mindset shift. I can cognitively reframe. I can do a deep breathing exercise so that my amygdala calms down. There are all kinds of things that you can do to change that internal reaction. And then there's the action. And that's also modifiable, right? We can change the way that we behave. That is like a technical thing that we can do.
Is it ever possible to remove negative emotion entirely? Like not be angry or physically just don't feel afraid or anxious of something? Or is it all just about managing it?
Are you angry right now?
Looking,
How
gotta
did you
get
do that?
food, will still be
Not.
around. No worries,
But how?
Merc.
You
Have
were
a
angry
have
at
a
some
good
point in the
food.
past.
Have a good
Some
foods.
point.
And now
Sure.
you're not.
Have some
Right.
num
How
nums.
did that happen?
Just by the stimulus is coming in.
Is that the only way?
I think so. Is it not?
So remember,
Yeah.
does a stimulus determine, does a stimulus control you?
Subconsciously it does.
Don't use that word
Okay.
because no one knows what that means. I don't know what that means. You don't know what that means. Does a stimulus control you?
Yes.
How?
It'll influence, I don't like to say subconsciously, it could, what?
Come forward.
Come forward.
Come.
Yeah.
Come.
No, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, come forward.
This is the
What?
stimulus.
He's
Yeah,
gonna put
but
his finger in your
Come.
mouth.
No, you're not here now. Come. See, what was that experience like for you?
Uncomfortable.
Right?
Yeah,
But
sure.
I created a stimulus.
Sure.
But your initial reaction was no, and you're like,
Yeah, because it felt like a test.
I'm doing something to you,
Yeah.
and you have some ability to modify what's going on inside.
I was reactive.
You were reactive, and
Yeah.
then you modified it. At the beginning, you said no.
Yeah.
Later, you said yes. Maybe you're regretting it. My point is that the stimulus doesn't 100% determine what happens. Now, you can make arguments against that. We can get on, because some people believe in biological determinism. I don't. But like, I don't think that the universe is biologically deterministic. You can make that argument, right? So the stimulus is just stimulus. Like, just to give you a simple example, and we know this, like, this is so common sense. When I was working in the emergency room, I one time went in to see a patient, and the patient's high on his mind on K2. Y'all know what K2 is?
Yeah.
It's synthetic marijuana. So,
like
like,
gas stations.
so like people
Weird
tell
stuff.
me that I'm a terrible piece of human being and all this kind of stuff. You hear this stuff all the time when you're a psychiatrist, but the first time it happened to me, it hurt to hear that. And then over time, as you learn more, that same stimulus does not have to have the same emotional reaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the emotional reaction is somewhat influenced by the stimulus, but is modifiable by you, right? So what was your original question?
Can you remove negative emotion entirely?
I don't know what you mean by remove, and I don't know what you mean by entirely.
Can you get rid of feeling negative feelings?
Yes. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can do it, right? So one way that we do it is ketamine. So like that's why we give it to people who are anesthetic.
Yeah.
Another way that we do it is through something called dissociation, which is not, generally speaking, healthy long term. So when people who are undergoing trauma dissociate, and there's a really fascinating
Thank you, Song,
neuroscience
for the
behind this.
follow. I appreciate it.
Normally, our emotions are on the right side of our brain. Our analytical brain is our left side of the brain. And these two parts talk through this thing in the middle called the corpus callosum. So when someone who's experiencing trauma dissociates, their left part of the brain and the right part of the brain stop talking to each other. So the emotions are all hyperactive on the right side. It's like there's a fire on one side of your house and the other side of your house is completely unaware of it. But the part of you that is running the show in that moment is the left side. So can you dissociate from emotions? 100%. Does that remove them entirely? Not really. In fact, they can be really intense. But I do believe you can get to states of mind where you're basically impervious to negative emotion.
In which situations are emotions productive or good? Summer's here, and with the heat picking up, I've traded my hot coffee for cold brew. And guys, I have found the absolute best way to make it at home with our sponsor, Trade Coffee.
For those unaware, Trade is the #1 coffee destination in the United States, and what makes them so unique is that they've partnered with 15 expert roasters to create an exclusive cold brew collection. These beans are specifically designed for cold brew, which gives them a rich, smooth flavor that you just can't get with any regular beans.
I used to drop probably like $5 a day on coffee at coffee shops. I'm not even kidding, but with Trade Coffee, I'm probably saving around $100 a month, and I'm also getting better quality coffee at the same time. It's a no-brainer. Plus, their cold brew kit makes it ridiculously simple. Just scoop the coffee, add water, let it sit overnight, and you've got cafe quality cold brew waiting for you in the morning. Seriously, guys, it's that easy.
The game changer here, though, is freshness. Every bag from Trade is roasted to order, so you're getting it at peak flavor, something that store-bought coffee can't offer. And for a limited time, Trade is giving away a free Hario cold brewer when you sign up for their cold brew subscription at drinktrade.com/ICH with the link down below in the description.
That's drinktrade.com/ICH to get a completely free cold brew maker with select cold brew subscriptions.
I didn't
Once
get to
again,
use the sale last time.
drinktrade.com/ICH. Thank you so much to Trade Coffee for sponsoring this episode. When I'm back in California visiting my parents, there is this perfect e-bike route that goes along the coastline that has honestly become one of the highlights of going back to visit them. E-bike rides aren't just incredibly fun though, they're becoming a serious transportation alternative, and our sponsor Upway is solving one of the main obstacles people face, the price tag.
Upway offers certified pre-owned e-bikes from top brands like Specialized, Cannondale, and Aventon at up to 60% off retail prices. Like look at the Aventon City, $1,700 new, but just $900 through Upway. And these aren't worn out bikes. Each one is professionally certified, backed by a warranty, and delivers like new performance.
If you're tired of wasting time in traffic, or you don't want to show up all sweaty from pedaling, or you just want to enjoy your commute for once, an e-bike makes perfect sense.
And best yet, right now, Upway is offering our listeners $150 off any purchase over $1,500 when you use the code ICEDCOFFEE through the end of May.
Check them out at upway.co, that is upway.co. Ditch the gas, skip the traffic, ride smarter, and you can thank me later. In which situations are emotions productive or good?
Okay, take a step back.
Yeah.
Okay, I know it's confusing. So we all have emotions, right? Why?
I don't know why.
right?
I don't know why either.
Maybe,
Right,
so
so like-
maybe so we don't. So it's a quicker response to certain things.
There we go, right? So emotions are not, and does a crocodile have
I
emotions?
haven't
Do you
had
know?
the
A
gallery
crocodile
before.
probably feels some
This
level
is
of
new.
panic or fear when it's being attacked.
Perfect.
You know? Yeah.
Right? So, first thing to understand, emotions aren't a problem. They're like a core feature which evolution has invested in for millions of years, including crocodiles. So there are two kinds of emotions. There are social emotions and primitive emotions. Primitive emotions are things that crocodiles can feel, like fear, anxiety, panic. They can be worried. They can feel afraid. Social emotions are things like shame or pride that require other people to fear. So if I put you on a desert island, there's no reason to be ashamed and there's no reason to be proud. You require other humans for that. Does that make sense? So once we have primates and we have social hierarchies and things like that, we buy ourselves pride, shame, etc. So emotions are really, really, really useful. They do two things. They give us information and they give us motivation. So if you sort of think about it, right? If I'm depressed, people think I'm not motivated. That's not true. Depression is very strong motivation towards inaction. Do y'all understand the difference? You know, you may think, why on earth would my brain ever be motivated towards inaction? What do y'all think? What is a situation in which you would want to be motivated to do absolutely nothing?
If the decision is between
Hi,
two
Fire
bad things.
Porter. How are
Okay, good.
you?
That's one option.
Welcome.
Other thoughts?
Just not feeling like it. I mean,
That's what depression feels like,
Yeah.
right? So generally speaking, when there is futile
Hmm.
action, we feel depressed. Does that make sense?
yeah.
So depression is an energy conservation strategy. If we never
Actual
felt
objective.
discouraged from our failures, we would keep doing the
Genu-
same damn thing
Verdi?
over and over and over again and constantly fail. Y'all with me? Depression is crucial. It keeps
Purpose,
us from
envy,
wasting our time.
lust,
Oh, this
wrath,
relationship is a
gluttony,
waste of my
sloth.
time. I'm no longer happy in it. Therefore, I'm not going to buy this person flowers. I'm not going to get married to them. We want inaction. The efficient allocation of resources is governed through sadness. So here's the really cool thing. Since hopelessness or futile action induces depression in inaction, a really cool motivational technique that you can do is reevaluate your calculation for hopelessness. Does that make sense? So if I think something is hopeless, but I'm wrong in that calculation and I change that calculation, depression will go away, motivation will increase. It's like that simple. Emotions do two things. They give us information. So there are times where our analytical mind doesn't know what's going on, but our primitive mind does. You walk into a room, everyone is laughing. One person looks at you and nods. Everyone
Interesting.
turns to look at you and everyone stops laughing. What happened? Something is wrong. You know it. You walk into a room, tension is thick in the air. You show up somewhere, someone's like, "Hey, Jack, great to see you. I'm so happy to see you, man. You're so great. I like you so much."
Thank you.
What are y'all feeling when I say that?
Jack would feel great. I'd be a little on edge.
What
so
do you
you're,
think?
you're calling me a sociopath, huh?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, what was
no,
your...
I would say that you seemed like you were faking it.
100%, right? So how do you know that? This is emotional processing happens so fast, in less than a second. If people are watching this, you knew in the first second. You didn't need me to keep going, right? You can tell right away that something is weird. So our emotional mind processes a ton of information, warns us about things. Right now, each and every one of us is subconsciously processing everything in our peripheral vision. If a snake appeared over there, all three of us would see it. Does that make sense? So our brain is literally looking at it all the time and processing what's going on there. So emotions are a huge source of information, number one. Second thing, huge source of motivation. So if we look at what motivates us, if you're spend the night at my house and I take a dump on your forehead, would you ever spend the night at my
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right.
As soon as
Jack
possible.
would never leave.
right? So if we think about like these vulgar I walked into
Of all
Well-
the examples you gave, that oddly specific.
yeah,
Especially because you invited us to stay
subconscious.
at the
Maybe I,
house.
yeah. So if you look at things like anger, right? Like, oh, my boss like disrespected me. Like, I'm never gonna tolerate that again. So like, anger is a very powerful motivator to protect our territory. So if I slap you across the face, that's a violation of your territory. Anger will cause you to suppress your risk assessment circuitry and act anyway, which is a feature. Another really interesting thing, there's another emotion that is wired to shut off our risk assessment. Can y'all guess what it is?
To shut off our risk assessment?
Yeah. There are two emotions that we experience with. Yes. Literally suppresses the part of our brain that risk assessments. Oh, I love you so much. Baby, do you have a condom? No, I don't have a condom, but it'll be okay. Yeah, it'll be okay. It's not okay. That's what happens, right? So like this, and that's evolutionary, because when we fall in love, unless we think about, if we don't stop thinking about how stupid this is, we won't procreate. Sorry, going back to emotions for a second, just to sum up. So I think feeling emotions is good, but being able to regulate emotions and being in control of emotions is the goal, not to dissociate or get rid of.
On the topic of personalities, is the Myers-Briggs accurate, or how can someone get a grasp of their personality?
So let's understand a couple things about Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs is based off of the work of Carl Jung. Carl Jung drew ideas heavily from India. So he studied Kundalini, he studied Ayurveda, he studied yoga. So like collective unconscious and stuff like that, that's all like based on yogic study, I think. So definitely he studied that stuff, whether he came up with it first and then learned more or what. The second thing about Myers-Briggs is that I have not been able to find an external source of validation for the Myers-Briggs types. So all of the research done on Myers-Briggs is usually done by Myers-Briggs. So it's not something that like external people have studied extensively that I've been able to find. If it's happening somewhere, I've looked pretty hard, I haven't found it. So I think that the current scientific consensus is that Myers-Briggs is not scientifically valid. But that doesn't mean that it isn't functionally useful. So this is what's really interesting, is that if you look at something like astrology, there are a lot of studies that show that astrology can be useful. They can be helpful to people. It can be functionally useful, even if it isn't technically true. And this is where things get a bit philosophical, but even if we look at like a family is like a human construction. It's not a real thing, right? So we can define a family, but it's like an idea in our head. Is this person part of my family? We don't share genetic material, but we say they're part of, because we define it a certain way, but we could define family in a different way and it would change. Does that make sense? So there are all kinds of things that human beings do that are helpful to us.
Nice to see you later night streaming. Hi,
or even in
Wabbit.
the
Yeah,
world, because they help us
I
make
mostly
sense of
just
the
wanted to
world.
play
They help
games and
us
listen to this
understand the
podcast
world. They
tonight.
help us understand ourselves.
So I
That can
figured
be
I'd just
useful, but it
stream
doesn't
and
necessarily, it's not true.
I don't know.
So I went through a Myers-Briggs training when I was in
Just
residency.
here to kill
This is like
time, I
Harvard
guess.
Medical School psychiatry
around.
residency. They put us through a
Relax.
Myers-Briggs thing. So helpful. I learned so much about communication and things like that. And I was like, oh, that's why that happens. It was very tailored to medicine. So I think that Myers-Briggs can be helpful. I don't think it's very scientifically valid. And I think that the majority of people who discuss Myers-Briggs have no idea what they're talking about.
What about when it comes to AI? Can AI
Hi,
start
Banner.
to
How are you?
self-diagnose things? Is it a reliable source? Can it be a replacement
AI
for?
self-diagnose?
Well, you type in and AI will diagnose whatever it is. Or can that be a replacement to therapy?
The way that I view AI is like a really advanced journal, right? So what you get out of ChatGPT is to a certain degree what you put in. So there are a lot of AIs that are really good at paying attention. So this is where they're really helpful for like, I don't think that they can be therapists, but they do one thing that generally speaking only therapists do, which is that they listen and remember things that you think are insignificant. So there are absolutely AIs that will draw connections between things that you say and will put them back to you. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So when I work with people who work with AIs, it's been interesting to see, can I be replaced by an AI? And so far the answer is no, but it could happen at some point. Totally fine. So I think that they can be like very advanced forms of journals, right? Because it's a journal that pays attention and applies significance to things. Now, there are a couple of big problems with AIs, which is that when you get legal advice from ChatGPT, how do you know if it's right?
Yeah, but how do you know if it's right if it's a person?
Well, a lawyer could be wrong. So I'll give you guys
Yeah.
a simple example. I tried to use ChatGPT to figure out the I was trying to get updated statistics on meditation.
What?
So I did research for a couple of years on Tai Chi at Harvard Medical School, trained there as a psychiatrist, built a stress management program that has been used by all kinds of companies and stuff like that. So I know the literature on meditation. I asked ChatGPT, hey, tell me about outcomes from meditation. And I said, give me citations and sources. So ChatGPT gave me a lot of stuff. It looked kind of right, but I was like looking at some of the stuff. I was like, this is really weird. this seems off to me. So I know the literature on meditation some. It's not like I've read every paper. Then what I did is I went and looked at the papers that it cited. Here's the really fascinating thing. The papers it cited did not say what it said they said. Does that make sense? So it said, this paper found, a study by these people found that meditation leads to a 28% reduction in depression. I looked at the paper. That's not what the paper says at all. It doesn't say that at all. So it falsely cites things. And that's where you have to really understand how these AI models work, which I'm not an expert in. But an AI model is an amalgamation of information. And do you all know how ChatGPT decides what to say?
It's like the highest percentage next word.
Something like that, right? So it does some iterative algorithm based on like what comes next. But that has no connection with reality. So if you ask ChatGPT to summarize one of my YouTube videos, it won't summarize my YouTube video. What it'll do is look at the topic of the video and then average what people on the internet are saying about that topic, and then it will put that out. The less practice it has to answer a question, the weirder the answers get.
What do you think we're going to look back at today as being really destructive, that is just accepted right now?
I think the most destructive thing that we are doing today is making other people responsible for our feelings.
So, like, you triggered me.
Yes, there's a difference between being offended and being hurt.
Well, that was a microaggression.
It was, right? So this is really dangerous, but like hurt and offended are two different things. So I had a patient, I was one time talking to the head of MIT campus security because they had a patient in our emergency room. And then I was like, we were talking about safety, and he's like, my job is to keep people safe, not make people feel safe. Those are like two very different things. And the really dangerous thing about confusing hurt with offended is that who, with microaggressions,
Cons 10. Thank you so much for the sub. I appreciate it.
State
That's very sweet.
when I
Thank you
get
so
triggered.
much for the
Thank
sub.
100%. And then what we're starting to do is we're trying to say, since you
Oh my God, what
triggered
is
me,
this?
you need to stop talking.
Key 8
Even if I
presumably
can
will
get you
unlock
to agree to
room
stop talking
8.
and I no longer feel triggered, what I am doing is losing the capacity to emotionally regulate. We are literally like
Room 8.
atrophying our ability to
No
receive
problem.
like,
I hope you
negativity
enjoy
from
the
outside.
new
So the more that I
emotes
shape
and
my
stuff.
environment to not give me bad signals, the more atrophied my emotional regulation circuitry becomes. Does that kind of make sense? Now that we all use GPSs, no one has direction sense anymore. You all notice that? So, what we're basically doing is like making ourselves more powerless in the world, because the world determines how we feel, it determines how we act, it determines what we want, it determines what we do, it determines our understanding of our own value, right? This is what's happening. And so we're wholesale, and somehow we're celebrating this. We're saying, hey, this is good. If I get triggered, everyone around me should stop talking. And so what that means is that I'm increasingly creating a world where like I'm fragile and the world can really mess me up very easily. So we're becoming more fragile and less resilient because of this one thing.
Is there anything out there that could severely damage someone's mental health long term?
Or a habit. Let's say you become like addicted to for like 20 years. Like, are you maybe lose some development when you're younger because you spend it on your phone?
Okay.
Or phone addiction would be a great one. Just like scrolling. Like, I need Subway Surfers below you to like pay attention. to
Growing
this
up without
conversation.
friends.
Yeah, so I think the answer is close to no, but practically maybe yes. So I'll give you all a couple. Let's just look at some data.
Flowers.
So if you look at people who use marijuana as teenagers, this absolutely affects the way that your brain develops. So this is why, like, I do not think marijuana is a good idea. While you have a developing brain, even past that, there's some questionable things. But so some studies show that you'll like lose 4 to 6 IQ points if you use a lot of pot when you're a teenager. But other studies show there's no impact
He
on
does
IQ.
not fit.
So that's like one thing where we know that like damage can be done, but a lot of it can be reversed. So I think that it makes it way harder to fix, but I think that most stuff can be like pretty fixed, right? So I think this is where the answer kind of depends on what specific thing that you're talking about. I've seen very severe trauma get a lot better,
Laboratory.
but it's hard to say. Like, so if someone grows up with a bunch of trauma, how do you know what fully healed looks like? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So then we get into some weird philosophical questions. If someone gets high from the ages of 15 to 12 to 25, if they hadn't ever done that, what would they be capable of?
It's
How
3
would you
times you
even
open a
know?
lock trunk.
Right? So it's a
When you
question that
draft
I
the
think is
hallway
impossible
from
to
another
answer in some
hallway,
sense.
or immediately.
At the same time, I think practically, I think most people can undo most of the damage that they've done to themselves.
Are there any quick tricks to find immediate inner peace or happiness?
Yes. There's one really cool trick. Go as meta as you can. So the more distance you create from whatever you're experiencing, the more peaceful you will be. So I'll give you an example.
Set
It's hard to do,
yourself
but
to
it's you wanna click,
40.
it works really well. If I say, I am a loser, and then I say, my mind is thinking I am a loser. Does that make sense? So when I say I am a loser, I am the one who is experiencing the suffering. The suffering is happening to me. But the moment that I say my mind is having thoughts that I'm a loser, which by the way is also technically correct, right? So when you say I am a loser, where is that happening? That is a thought or an emotion in your mind. And this is what's really weird. I don't know if you'll know this. Thoughts aren't real and emotions are temporary. So I am a loser is a statement of permanency. But the moment that you realize that is a thought, you can have a thought every day. It still doesn't make it true. So the moment that you go meta and you sort of notice, okay, my mind is thinking I'm a loser today. My mind is experiencing a lot of anger. There's a lot of anger in my body right now. The moment that you start doing that, you become more peaceful. There are studies about this too. So if you have someone who you want to talk about something who's triggering, if I talk to my patient about a trauma of theirs and they say, I don't want to talk about it, it's triggering, that's totally fine. If I ask them, what makes it hard to talk about? We don't have to talk about the trauma, but what makes it hard for you to discuss? Now they're not talking about the trauma, they're talking about why they can't talk about the trauma. This is easier to talk about. Does that kind of make sense? If I were to ask you, Jack, do you want to buy this car? And you say, no, I don't want to buy this car. And I ask you, why don't you want to buy the car? It's easier for you to talk about why you don't want to buy the car than it is for you to buy the car. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So you can do that for anything in your life, where you just go one level meta, one level meta, one level meta. And the more meta you go, the more peaceful you'll become.
So what does that stream of consciousness look like taking it to the nth degree? Let's just go through a practice right now.
Sure.
So you're saying, I am a loser. What could then that be stretched to?
My mind is having thoughts that I'm a loser.
And then how do you stretch that?
If I achieved peace with my mind is having thoughts.
Let's say no.
Okay. So then we have to hypothesize what the next thought is, right? So it's like, oh man, my mind, why do I have a mind that is so messed up?
Yeah.
That is always having these thoughts of being a loser.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Now my mind is blaming my mind for having all these problems.
Why can't I ever come to a conclusion?
My mind is really struggling with uncertainty and not being able to come to a conclusion.
That still doesn't feel resolute.
Good. That's because there is a fundamental mistake you're making. You are assuming that resolution leads to peace. It doesn't necessarily. You don't need resolution. You don't need peace from resolution. That is the biggest mistake that many people make. They think their problems need to be solved and things need to be completed or resolved in order to feel peace. You don't need problems to be solved, right? The uncertainty in the world is the same for everybody, basically. Maybe not the same, but there's big things like climate change is like the same. But some people are comfortable with that uncertainty. Some people are okay with that lack of resolution, and other people are not. Does that make sense?
That does.
So your problem is you need to be able to tolerate lack of resolution. The moment that you do that, you're going to be so much more peaceful, right? I don't need this to be fixed right now. This is the way it is. What'll happen tomorrow?
I don't want to get rid
In
of
terms
key
of coming to
8.
peace like that, what about willpower?
Is there
Why do some people seem to have way more
anything I could
willpower
do
than others?
for...
Because some people have way more willpower than others.
And that is a genetic predisposition?
Could be a genetic predisposition, but let's understand that willpower is a resource.
Interesting.
So there are some things that drain your willpower really rapidly. One of the 3 biggest drains for willpower is emotional suppression. So I'd say, especially amongst young men or men in general, if there's a man that I meet that feels like they have low motivation, has low willpower, lacks motivation, 99% of the time, their RAM is being occupied suppressing their emotions. So I want y'all to, I don't know if y'all used the internet back in the day of the terrible pop-up ads where you close a pop-up and another pop-up pops up. So these are people, there are people who are basically constantly having pop-ups and constantly closing them down. And then they literally, you can't use your computer for anything productive because there are constantly pop-ups happening. And you're shutting it down, shutting it down, shutting it down, shutting it down. So these people they're living with constant willpower drains. That's one piece. You can have a genetic predisposition. Willpower comes from the anterior cingulate cortex. Some people have stronger frontal lobes than others. That's the second piece. Third piece is that you can strengthen your anterior cingulate and your frontal lobe so that you can increase your capacity for willpower. Fourth reason that people seem like they have a ton of willpower is because they don't exert it frequently throughout the day. So they rely on things like habits, or they have like other kinds of like positive forces of motivation where they don't need to expend their willpower.
Someone that tends to think about happiness, think about seeking fulfillment, think about questioning their decisions all of the time, never coming to a good resolution, I guess. Is that indicative of them being less happy?
So we have to pay attention to the question. People who think about happiness, people who think about better decisions, people who think. So the first question is, what is happiness? I mean, from a technical sense, have you experienced happiness?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so first thing to understand is if you've experienced happiness, that means that there is a constellation of things going on within you that we call happiness, correct? Now all we have to figure out is what is the constellation of things. So let's say that I take a 6-year-old kid. It's like, Daddy, I want some ice cream. I'm like, let's go get some ice cream. I'm so excited. I want ice cream. And then they get the ice cream. Oh, man, this is so good. They're just eating the ice cream. What's going on in their head?
It's
Nothing.
the singularity of the mind.
It's the single point consciousness.
There we go, right?
Yeah.
That's all happiness is. It is one-pointed consciousness when you are fully absorbed. So there are even times where if you really think about it, oh, why do you love surgery? It's so hard. You're standing there for hours a day. But there's this laser-pointed consciousness that feels amazing. So let's now think about unhappiness. What is unhappiness? Doubts, regrets. The more stuff that is going on in our head, and this is also when we know, like if we look at the nature of mental illness, what do we see in most mental illnesses? An increase in mental activity, anxiety, overabundance of mental activity. Even depression, very, very potent mental activity. I suck. I'm hopeless. I should kill myself, right? Very intense mental activity. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Happiness is simply one-pointedness of the mind or complete absence of mental activity. Those are the two. Do y'all agree or disagree, have concerns about that? I'm talking about the state of happiness.
Yeah. Yes, that makes sense.
Right? So like the actual experience of happiness is like, I got this, I'm waiting for this Christmas present. I got the Christmas present. I opened the book and like, let's go. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So like you're one-pointed in the mind, flow state. So that's why people in the flow state don't mind working. Work isn't good or bad. It is our state of mind. I want you all to think about this. When you have a shitty job, what are you thinking about? You're not thinking about the work. You're thinking, I can't wait to leave. When is the time going to be over? An hour has gone by, 2 hours have gone by. That's all you're doing. You're not thinking about anything except, you're thinking about everything except for the work. I wish I was here. I wish I was there. That's unhappy. Unhappiness in a relationship. My partner does this. Instead of being with your partner does this. This annoys me. My ex didn't do this. Maybe I should move on. You're thinking about 1,000 things except for where you are. Make sense? So that's all happiness is. You can cultivate happiness 100% if you cultivate one-pointedness of the mind.
How do you find things that give you one-pointedness of the mind? Or how is that something that you have to choose to feel during a certain activity?
So that's the right question. So the problem in the world is that we rely on things to evoke one-pointedness of the mind, right? So this is how we become materialistic. It's just like the trigger warning thing. Now, in order to be happy, I need that video game because I don't know how to cultivate my one-pointedness of the mind. Therefore, I become reliant on an outside thing to do it for me. Does that make sense? The more that I become addicted to video games and I rely on them for one-pointedness of the mind, that's why they're so addictive, by the way, because when we play a video game, we forget everything else. Same is true. But then the moment that things stop,
Ice
now all the
cream!
thoughts
Me
come
hungry,
flooding.
gonna eat
The
some
problem
barbecue
is that
ribs.
we
That sounds
rely
good,
on external
Rabbit.
things
Enjoy
for
your
our happiness.
ribs.
And the moment that we stop cultivating the capacity to be happy, then we become victims of our circumstances. So if I get the thing, then I'm happy. If I don't get the thing, then I'm not happy. This gets even worse because what is society trying to do? They're trying to evoke unhappiness. And if they evoke unhappiness, what can they do, Jack?
Control you
How?
by telling you what will make you happy.
There we go, right? So you said, how do you find the things that make you happy? perfect. So society loves that. Like advertising loves that.
Well,
We're going to make you feel unhappy.
I
We're
have
going to
no
create a
keys,
desire within
and I
you,
can't
and
go
when you
nowhere
gratify
without
the
no
desire,
key.
you think you'll be happy. Love that cycle.
So why is it then that some people are drawn to the really
So-
low-hanging fruit, like let's
Oh,
just
well,
say
I
it's
guess.
porn or junk food or video games?
I
where
can go
other
check
people
the
don't have a
schoolhouse,
problem
but I don't
sacrificing
think
some of
that
for
a
like
key can spawn in
long-term
there.
gain,
But I
and they
might
get
as
more
well. It's
enjoyment
the only
from,
room
like,
I haven't been
hey,
inside.
5 years from now, if I do all these things, then my life is going to be epic, and that to me is happiness.
So I think it's a great question, but I think we have to define our terms a little bit, and we need to get a little bit more precise. So let's look at the experience of one day of the person who chooses work instead of video games. What
Texas
goes
warm
on
up
in
any?
their
It's
mind over the
all the
course of that day,
snow's
right? So when I
melted, but
choose not
it's
to play
still
video
pretty
games
cool.
and I go to work, like let's say my
It's not
boss
like
needs me to come in over the
warm.
weekend and
It's
I
still cold
volunteer for it.
outside, but
What's
like
going on in
it's
my head?
warm
Just trying
enough
to do
to
an
where
escape
it's
mentally. Just trying to check out.
I don't think
not
people who
Yeah.
try to escape
like
mentally will
snowy
volunteer
and
for
stuff.
work
So
on a weekend.
you know,
Okay.
I think people who escape mentally will play video games. So I think this is where like we have to be a bit precise, right?
Okay,
So
yeah.
I think generally speaking, I've seen a couple things. One is that sometimes 5 years later, those people aren't happy, right? They make a sacrifice now, and then 5 years later, they just move the goalposts. Have you all seen that?
Mhm.
Oh, what's my number? I need to make this much, then I'll be happy. And then the number keeps moving, keeps moving, keeps moving. But if we get precisely down to it, I think the reason that they become happy in the moment, and they're not necessarily happy, is because they use that
I'm gonna check out my
decision
print.
to get rid of an anxiety or a discomfort. So if you really think about it, who is it that sacrifices? And y'all may understand this. Medical students are great at this. So if you have someone who's highly neurotic and worried about their future, one of the solutions to make their anxiety go away is to work really hard. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So in that moment, they're not necessarily happy. But if I'm afraid I'm going to fail a test and I spend all night studying at the library, then I'm going to assuage my fear. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So then if we assume that happiness is excessive activity in the mind, and I can shut down the fear in my mind by working extra hard, I see this pattern all the time. We see this pattern so much in our coaching program because people think that you have to work really hard in order to be really successful, which is one of the biggest scams that we've been sold, is that sacrifice is necessary for success, right?
Mhm.
And if sacrifice is necessary for success, and I am your boss, what is it okay for me to do to you?
Just overwork.
100%,
Right.
because sacrifice is a part of it. So everyone has this sort of idea that, okay, if I'm afraid of being broke, or if I'm afraid of whatever in the future, I want a certain future, I'm afraid of not having it. Does that kind of make sense? Because if you want something, that means that there is a negative side to that you're trying to avoid. So even building towards a future means avoiding something else a lot of the times. And then what happens is when I work really hard, that calms down my fear. This is how people become workaholics. This is how people burn out. Because now, what is my method of getting rid of anxiety? It is working really hard. And this is where my successful CEOs really come in, because they do this all the time. There's a group of people who uses toxic fuel, really, really potent, like nuclear energy, but fucking radioactive. And what you buy with it is productivity, you buy success, you buy ambition, you buy money, but you don't buy happiness.
But what about for the people who use that as an excuse to say, well, I'm just not going to work hard now because I know that's not going to get me to being happy?
Those people are looking for an excuse to not work hard. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
If I say that and then they say, oh yeah, like it's all a scam.
Yeah, it's all scamming.
I didn't
Yeah.
change their mind. They had that belief before. They don't want to work hard. And then their mind is going, that's how cognitive bias works. And I mean, I know this is like, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, can be touchy, but
Sure.
just think about the people in your life who've decided that they don't want to do something. You can give them as many reasons as you want to. They will come up with 1,000 reasons to say no if they've decided to say no. Some people have decided they don't want to work hard, or it's not even technically that they don't want to work hard. Many of the reasons, the most common reason that I've seen that people say that is because they believe that their hard work will lead to failure. They don't believe their hard work will pay off like someone else's did.
I got a question for you. When's the last time you needed to see a doctor, but you pushed it off, you made the excuse, I'm too busy, it'll heal on its own, or I don't even know where to go to? I think we've all been there. Booking a doctor's appointment can sometimes just feel so daunting, but it doesn't have to with our sponsor, ZocDoc. With ZocDoc, there is no reason to delay because they make it seriously easy to find and book a doctor who's right for you.
For those unaware, ZocDoc is a free app and website where you could search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors and then click to instantly book an appointment. You could filter for doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, are a good fit for any medical needs you might have, and are highly rated by other verified patients. And then once you find the right doctor, you could see their actual appointment openings, choose a time that works for you, and then click to instantly book a visit.
And appointments made through ZocDoc also happen really fast, typically within 24 to 72 hours of booking, and you can even score same-day appointments. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/ice today to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor. That is ZocDoc.com/iced, ZocDoc.com/iced with the link down below in the description. Thank you so much to ZocDoc for sponsoring this episode. So in terms of relationships, is there anyone out there that's condemned to be single their entire life?
Probably.
What type of person?
Like, there are some people who are born with, like, 1/10 their brain. I think those people are not capable, or like incredibly severe autism, or like chromosomal abnormalities that are very severe. I think those people are condemned.
But that is such a small percentage of the population. There's not one more common trait or feature or characteristic that condemns people to be single.
I don't think so. So, I mean, I think there are things. So, condemned is such a final thing. So, I think about it in terms of probabilities. So, if you have someone who has schizoid personality disorder, the likelihood that they will be single is really high. But that's because they don't value relationships, right? So, someone who's schizoid is like, the way that they relate to other people is different. Like, it's not a priority for them. Like, they don't derive a whole lot of pleasure or have any desire for a relationship, which, by the way, is a little bit debatable. And in some personality disorder experts, there's a guy named Kirk Honda who's got an awesome YouTube channel. He actually disagrees, and I would trust him. But I think that there are some people who are not interested in relationships. But I'm also kind of like confused by the question because, if someone becomes a monk, I wouldn't say that that person is condemned to be single. Like, I don't think that's a choice more so than a condemnation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think most people are capable of having relationships if they get the right help and have the right mindset.
And how do you know if a relationship becomes toxic? What are the signs to look out for? Or how do you know if a relationship makes you a better or worse person? And if it's making you worse, how do you know that?
I think you have to define what is better or worse person. How do you define that?
Are you progressing or are you regressing? Are you becoming more of your true self or less of it? Are they holding you back or are they pushing you forward?
So there's a really interesting model of passion. So passion is scientifically how we define like romantic relationships. So there's this model called the self-expansion model, which basically says that as a human being, I have an identity of myself, right? And that's defined by certain things. Like, I want to grow as a person. I'm not content to be like a 5-year-old. I have ambitions. I want to maybe become a doctor. I want to become a millionaire. I want to have a nice house. I want to get a dog. There are ways for me to level up as a human. Now, the really interesting thing about this model of self-expansion is that at some point, me includes another person with a romantic partner. So the way that I grow involves this other person. That's still me. Does that kind of make sense? So if I think about becoming a father requires other people for me to like level up and grow. So I think a healthy relationship is one where your sense of self is expanding. You are still leveling up. You are still growing. Now I have a family. Now we go on family vacations. This has become a part of my life that I enjoy, that I value. It didn't exist before. So there's like progress that way. Does that make sense? So I think generally speaking, if you're in a relationship where you are growing, if your sense of self is expanding, then that's good. So on the flip side, if that's not happening, if there's a contracture of yourself, then I think those relationships are unhealthy, not necessarily toxic. So I see a lot of relationships that aren't toxic, but where both partners become complacent. So they become codependent. They're not growing. It's like, I see this a lot with substance use where it's like, this is why people say, when you're in rehab, don't date someone else who's in early recovery, because if you relapse, then the other person sees you and they're like, okay, like, let's do it together. So there are many relationships that become stagnant where people are like operating based on momentum or inertia. And the relationship isn't like growing. You're just kind of there. You become kind of roommates who have sex occasionally and you have maybe shared finances, but there's no passion, there's no sense of growth. It's not necessarily a toxic relationship, but I don't think it's a healthy one. Then when it comes to toxicity, I think the hard thing about toxicity is that people who are frequently in toxic relationships have a scorecard where toxicity is normal. If you look at people who wind up in abusive romantic relationships, the likelihood that they were abused in childhood is super high. So the challenge about discovering whether you have a toxic relationship or not is that oftentimes what you think is normal is toxic, because normal for you has been defined as toxic.
But what about, let's just say, the women who love bad boys? Like, they love the ones that like really mistreat them despite knowing better. How does that play into that?
When a human being is in a relationship with someone who abuses them, this is the key thing to understand. The person who is abusive is not abusive every day, right? Or maybe they're abusive every day, but they're not abusive every moment. So there are good days and there are bad days with abuse. Do y'all kind of get that?
Mhm.
So since there are good days and there are bad days, that means that my behavior can influence the good days or the bad days. So, my partner hit me because I was too loud. My partner hit me because I didn't make the food the way that they wanted. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
These are the thoughts that they have in their head. So what that means is that the abuse is not controlled by the abusive person. The abuse is determined by me. If I behave in the right way, I'm safe. And if I don't behave in the right way, I'm not safe. So this is why people kind of stay in those relationships, is that there's this weird dynamic that happens where they strive to be perfect. And if I strive to be perfect, then the abuse will stop.
Apples are actually
Therefore, it is
delicious.
within my power to control the abuse. I know it's kind of messed up, but that's like what's going on in their head. Does that kind of make sense?
Mhm.
And if we look at gambling, right? Gambling is a random reinforcement schedule, and gambling reinforces behavior. If there's a fixed reinforcement schedule, if I work for 4 hours and I make $40 versus I gamble and I win 40 or I lose 40, people will still gamble instead of work if they want $40, because there's a fundamental part of our brain, there's a neurological bias there where we get drawn to random reinforcement schedules. And oftentimes what happens in toxic relationships is the goods are good enough to outweigh the bads, at least in some part of your mind. And then you start to get acclimatized to it, because human beings are also incredibly adaptable. So since I've survived the abuse, like, I can handle this. Whereas if I date someone else or if I leave this person, I don't know what else I'm going to find. Does that kind of make sense? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different dynamics at play.
I've always felt it was a bit, not necessarily in terms of abusive, but like I heard there's like that saying that I don't want to be a part of any club that would take me as a member because then they must not be that good. Is it more of like a self-esteem sort of thing? If like this person is really into me, then they probably have something wrong with them.
So that is a huge problem, but not
Yeah.
quite for abusive relationships.
Okay.
So there are a lot of people who get into bad relationships over and over and over again, not necessarily abusive. And that's because they don't rate themselves well enough, right? So if I have, let's say, like, I'm a decent person, but I have low self-esteem. So then what happens is there are people who are actually at my level that I self-select out. I feel flawed. Everyone's flawed, but I feel really flawed. So when I look at someone who's not really flawed, I'm like, this person would never date me. Therefore, I go looking for flawed people, because those are the only people that date me. But then I'm setting myself up for failure because I'm flawed and I'm looking for people who are flawed. And then what's going to happen? The relationship falls apart. That happens 3 times in a row. Now I'm looking at my friends. Oh my God, my friends are getting married. I've been single for so long. I've had 3 failed relationships. I am so flawed. Now that I feel even more flawed, I look for more broken people. Does that make sense?
It does.
So the really sad thing is, if you look at the best treatment, I don't know if y'all are familiar with like attachment styles, like avoidant attachment, insecure attachment. But the best treatment for avoidant attachment or insecure attachment is to date a securely attached person. There's some studies that show that someone with BPD dating someone without a personality disorder, being in a stable relationship for 2 years, can lead to resolution of the BPD. So the best thing to do if you are a screwed up person is to date someone who is not screwed up. And that may seem really hard. It may seem really scary. Or a lot of the reasons that people don't do that is because they're afraid of rejection. So the more broken person I pick, the less likely I am to get rejected. And therefore, it feels safer. So even though it feels safer, it's worse. There's a difference between safety and worse.
What do you think is something really important that not enough people are asking their partner?
I think the most important question that is not asked is like how things work. So I don't know if this is going to make sense, but what are the rules of our relationship? So I'll give you all like a simple example. So, oftentimes people will disagree about finances, how we split the bills. Do you make more money? If one partner makes more money than the other partner, how do you all decide to split things? Do we each pay half? Do you pay like 50% of your income and I pay 50% of my income? There's all kinds of like rules that people will come up with, right? But oftentimes the rules are in favor of like one person. Like, so each person is kind of looking at it from their perspective.
Mhm.
So I think a meta level conversation of like, when we disagree, what is the system? So we can argue back and forth over finances. Does that make sense? And I share my point, you share your point. Neither of us is right, neither of us is wrong, but we're each sharing a perspective. But when we have a disagreement, what is our method to resolve that problem? What is our method of conflict resolution? What is our method of resolution? Is it just we argue until one person succeeds? Do you get this one and I get the next one? So I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but I think people don't talk about the systems of their relationship nearly enough. And that's because it's such an abstract concept.
And how could you tell if a relationship is going to make it or fail? Is there something you look for or notice in a person?
Yeah, so this is so weird, but I've observed this in my practice. So, I see a lot of people. And the interesting thing is I see a lot of unhealthy relationships and I see a lot of healthy relationships because a lot of people with like addictions or depression or anxiety, like they actually have a really great relationship. So I think one of the biggest things is a red flag early in the relationship leads to success, which is something that is not what most people think. So a lot of times what people do is they avoid red flags. This person has a red flag, therefore I'm done with them. So then you look for someone who has no red flags, right? So then no red flags. So you're dating them for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then a problem arises. Now, how do you deal with this challenge? Let's say a red flag arises. Now, your partner is employed, right? So they've got a stable career. Like, I can date this person. They're independent. They've got a stable career. They're financially stable. Let's say that they're a software developer and now there's a contraction in the software development industry. They lose their job. Now this absence of a red flag has now become a problem in your relationship. Do they fall into depression and they never work again? You don't know. Does that kind of make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the problem is that when you avoid red flags in a relationship, you do not assess conflict resolution. You do not assess adversity. You do not assess how this person will
Hi,
respond
Night
to
Wolf.
adversity.
How are you?
So one of the biggest things that I've seen in, like, basically I've looked at my patients who have successful relationships, true of my relationship too. Like when my wife started dating me, like I was unemployed, graduated with a 2.5 GPA, like, I didn't have any money, didn't have any prospects, failed to get into medical school for 2 years in a row. Like, there were so many red flags. But the interesting thing is that when you date someone who has a red flag and you address the red flag, that can be one of the best prognostic factors for a relationship. Because if someone has a problem and you talk with them about it and they're able to overcome it, that's one of the best signs. Does that kind of make sense?
It does.
Because it explains to you, okay, like my partner's smoking. And I tell him, hey, I really think this is bad, right? Like, I want you to change this. And it's not like I'm not trying to be a controlling asshole. It's like, it's bad for our kids if we have kids one day. It's bad for so many reasons. It's bad for your health. Like, this should change. And then if the person is like, yes, you're right. But you can't, if you knock all the smokers off the list, you never get a chance to have that conversation.
Other than being
and you
sick
never
of
get a
winter,
chance
I'm
to
fine. How
select
are
for a
you?
partner
I
who
am
will
a little
respond to
done
adversity in the
for
right way,
the cold
who will
as well,
take your consideration
honestly.
seriously in the right way. You never get to assess those things.
But are there any red flags that are like, red flags, avoid this?
I mean, there are lots of people that I wouldn't date. Like, I think that's true. So, like, if someone is, a project, like, in terms of, like, if they're just a complete asshole to
out there.
everyone around them, super narcissistic.
Maybe think about it from the perspective of a guy, since like 85% of our audience is male.
I think there's a huge difference between red flags that are like wrong objectively and like chicks to avoid if we're being like a little bit heteronormative, right? So like, are there things that make me worried? Are
Cookies!
there
Let's
qualities
go!
in girls that make me personally worried when my friends are dating them? 100%, man. And if that's true, I mean, I'm happy to share that, but that's kind of like a personal opinion. I want to draw a distinction between like red flags as a psychiatrist
25
and like
minus
things
5
that I
is 20.
personally
20
would steer clear
times
from.
What would you
2
recommend to
is
personally
40.
steer clear from? Like, what sort of traits?
Maybe because applying corrective
Wait.
behavior is like just so much effort. Or
Yeah,
something like-
Oh, I
like,
misread
I
that.
think at the top
That's
of the list is
12.
entitlement. So I think it's
16
getting really
minus
hard
5
to
is
date people
11
who
times
have
2 is 22.
perceptions.
Divided
So
by
entitlement is a big one.
11
Another big one
is
is
2.
self-excusing of bad behavior. So this attitude of
Yeah.
if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. So like people who are like, I'm allowed to be an asshole some of the time,
2.
and that's okay, right? So people who accept that they don't need to grow and they're like, take it or leave it as it is. Like, I'm perfect the way that I am. So I sort of believe that as a
10.
psychiatrist. Like, everyone can't be any different than the way that they are, but they shouldn't be like happy with being an asshole. Does that kind of make sense?
Yep.
So I think that there's a lot of like entitlement, a lot of like,
10
I don't need to grow
times
as a
1
person.
is
I would steer clear of that. Like if I,
10.
you know, when I have friends who date
And then
women like that or dudes like
10
that who are super, you know, like
squared.
I don't need to change.
Hey
like,
Siri,
I'm
what is
perfect the way
10
that I am.
squared?
Like, that
Yeah.
is a big steer clear.
10 squared
What
is
about
100.
body
100.
count shaming?
Divided by
is there a part where that becomes
20
detrimental?
is 5.
Detrimental to who?
To either both sides.
So when it comes to like things
There
like
you go.
body count shaming, I think the main thing is to understand
Nice.
what is your association with body count shaming. So if we kind of think about, okay, like body count
There's
shaming,
an
why is
8-foot
bad
pile of
body
snow
count
next to
bad?
my car.
indicative
Okay,
of,
more like
you know,
7. Oh
character.
my god, Soren.
Exactly, right? So this is where there's
I'm
an
kind of hoping the
association.
snow
You are
stays
using
for
this
another
piece of
week, though.
information
Just
and
saying.
drawing inferences based on that piece of information to other things. If this person has a high body count, that means XYZ. So I think this is where when I work with people, it's about digging into that association. Where do you get the idea that people who have sex with a lot of people are whatever, right? So whether you value that or don't value that, like whatever, like, well, you know, it's whatever comes after that. What does it say about their character? Like they'll say, oh, it says this about their character, right? That they're not selective. Well, where do you get that idea? So oftentimes what I find is that when people have these kinds of impressions of like, okay, this person has a high body count, like that's a no-no. I think it's fine. I mean, you do you, but also I think the most important thing there is for you to examine why you believe that. And I think the cool thing there is that if you examine that belief, what you could be doing is opening up a pool of people who may be perfect for you, except you have this association that prevents you from even considering them. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. So what is one of the things that most people put a wall up to, but if they just got rid of it, they could find their soulmate?
I think the biggest thing that prevents people from finding their soulmate is the impression of what they're looking for in their head. A soulmate is something that is felt. It is not like my soulmate is like has $1 million and is 6 feet tall or has this size boobs or whatever. That's not the criteria of a soulmate. Like even if you get precise with the definition, what does it mean? What does a soulmate mean? That means that your connection is on the level of the soul. It's not a particular job or a particular car or a particular hair color. Does that kind of make sense? But the problem is that when people
Magnifying
are so
glass and
focused on
metal
the criteria,
detector.
they don't open themselves up to experience the
Interesting.
soulmate. So they're so in their head that they're not in the present with this particular person. And, you know, I've had patients who will have very satisfying sexual and romantic relationships with people that they would not consider, or that are not considered
Upgrade
conventionally attractive.
disc.
So I've seen like cases of like, you know, 10s dating 5s and being happily married and having great sex lives. And everyone looks at that couple and they're like, what is going on there? Because there's such an imbalance. But the two of them are completely happy, very happy. But in order to do that, you have to get out of the ego of I'm a 10 and you're a 5. Even both of them know you're a 10 and I'm a 5. Like you can both know that, but then you just both accept each other. And you don't get bogged down in the fact that this person is a 5.
So what do soulmates have that standard relationships don't?
A connection on the level of the soul.
How would you quantify that?
Quantification is hard because quantification requires measurement, and I don't know if things. This is where things get weird. But if you, I mean,
They've already gotten
Okay.
weird, man.
so things on the dimension of the soul are very difficult to quantify because the dimension of the soul is not physical. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So how do you measure a thought? We can't. Like, what are the units of
You might be
anger?
able to look at a brain wave or like see which part of your brain lights up for a thought.
Good.
Yeah.
But this is not, you're stepping right into it. But yeah. So let's understand for a second. Do we know that thoughts exist?
Mm-hmm.
How?
Yes, because
Well,
you
what is exist? What do you mean by exist?
I would just say
Great.
yes because you experience them.
Okay, so this is the first thing. Existence has two components, an experiential component, a physical component. So I can measure the electrical activity in your brain. I can look at the emission of positrons from different parts of your brain. I can measure blood flow to different parts of your brain. I can look at brain waves, but I can't ever measure a thought, right? There's no way to measure a thought. I can measure certain physical substrates that correlate with thoughts, but I can't measure a thought. Do dogs feel shame?
Yes.
How do we know?
I mean,
Because
look
of
at
their
their
actions.
faces when they tear up the.
So you observe a behavior. You don't know what the dog is feeling. And we correlate that with shame,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
But we don't know that no human being has ever had proof that a dog feels shame. We just see a behavior that we interpret as shame. Make sense?
Mhm.
How do humans feel shame? Right.
I would assume so.
I mean, forget it. Just what's the first answer
Yeah.
that comes to your mind? Don't be.
yeah, sure.
Yes, of course. Of course we feel shame. Like that's an accepted when we move around in the world that human beings feel shame. How do we know?
Talk to one another and talk about our feelings.
There we go, right? So we have some way to transmit our subjective experience, but that doesn't make it objective. Okay? So we have a shared delusion of which we have no proof, which is thought and emotion. So what that means is that there's two layers of reality. I know we're getting out there. One is the physical dimension,
What?
which is like measurable, right? We can quantify things.
Have
we
I
can
seen
measure
your
things, but we don't have
tripod?
like a way to really measure or quantify
I'm live,
thoughts,
yeah.
emotions, things like that. There is a potency
Yeah.
to them. There's more angry and less
Yeah.
angry, but we don't have instruments to measure precisely. Does that make sense? So what is a soulmate?
Why would it
So
be in my
there's the
room?
physical realm where we can get connected to someone. I can look at someone, I can be attracted to their physical appearance. There's an emotional level, right? Which is like, I feel this emotion, this person feels this emotion. There's a great experiment that showed that people who share emotions during dates are the ones who feel attracted to each other. So you have to have a shared emotional experience. This is actually why people go to movies and why they date with movies, because they're like, you're not interacting. The interesting thing is it causes bonding because if both of you all enjoyed the movie in the same way, when you walk out of the movie, you feel connected to the person, even though you haven't done anything. Because both of y'all are laughing, oh my God, that was hilarious, right? And then they're like, you want to grab food? Yeah, absolutely. That movie was great. It's actually shared emotional experience, which is also why people fall in love in rehab, because we're all like going through it. So there's a connection at the level of physical, connection at the level of emotional, there's intellectual connection. And then the question becomes, can connection that you feel with a human being be sufficiently quantified with those three dimensions? If the answer is yes, then there's no space for a soul.
A bookshop.
But if the answer is no, it means that there's some kind of constant, right? Or like some kind of variable that we can't. My connection to this person cannot be explained through physical, emotional, and intellectual sufficiently. There is something else. It's not love.
Writing
It's not
Strategy, Volume
intellectual,
4
it's
and
not just physical. There's
5.
something about them that I feel connected to, I feel drawn to. That is the subjective experience of people. If that is the subjective experience of
Interesting.
people, then the question becomes, okay, like, so is this just biology and there's really nothing there and we just can't calculate it, but really it's just hormones and stuff that we can't see? Or is the presence of some fourth dimension existing, which is the dimension of the soul?
I'm curious. So based on those things you're talking about, like shared emotion, can you design the perfect first date?
I don't know if you can define the perfect first date because that presumes that you know what stimulus creates what reaction.
True, but you could design things that are emotionally stimulating and unique so that you have a shared experience together. So you could
So you
define
can,
something for yourself
you can-
that would be a selection bias. That
well, so,
if
so
people
I
f- yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you can design the predict the perfect first date, but
Yeah.
you can absolutely design, and this is where a lot of people make mistakes. You can design a date structure that is based on science that will increase your likelihood of falling in love with them and will increase their likelihood of falling in love with you. That I believe 100%. So shared emotional experience forms connection between human beings. When you talk to your friend who is like absolutely in love, oh my God, she gets me, bro. She gets me. He gets me. He understands me in a way that no one else has. There's connection. Does that make sense? Shared emotional experience is one of the things for connection. There's other factors like impressing the other partner and stuff like that, but we're talking about forming a romantic connection, not mate selection. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And then what happens is when you form this romantic connection, this is why people date the wrong person, because they form the connection and they're not right on paper, but I feel the connection. So sharing emotional experience is great. Haunted houses,
My
fantastic.
room.
If you're scared and if she's
It's
scared.
really the
I think
only
one of the
decision
biggest
here.
problems is that people will do things like coffee dates and get to know each other.
There we
Getting
go.
to know each other is terrible for falling in love. Because what are you doing? You're using your left brain. This is a job interview. That's what coffee dates are. I want to feel you out. I want to see if I like you or not like you. You got to do something. That's also why, like, sometimes even if you fight, so you'll notice that, like, people will say, like, there's a thin line between love and hate, and people can fall in love and they can fight all the time. And if you think about it, when we're fighting, what is your emotional experience? Let's say you and I get into a fight. What are you feeling emotionally?
Fuck.
Negative.
I'm locked out.
Okay. What am I feeling emotionally?
Probably negative as well.
That's why it works.
Okay.
Right? So even though we're
I
both
only have one more
feeling angry with
draftable
each other,
room.
we feel emotionally connected. Now, that doesn't mean that you should fight, but it explains why a lot of people who fall in love, like, don't get along. Because even their negativity will evoke negativity. They drive each other crazy, but then the next day they're, like, back at it. Yeah.
How long should it take then to fall in love? Or is there like steps to it?
So this is where we get to soulmates. So in my case, I fell in love over the course of a second. Like, I remember the first time I saw my wife, I literally felt like I had been punched in the chest, and I did not understand what the was going on. So I don't know how to explain that. So this is the reason I believe in soulmates, because I've tried to figure out what happened to me that day. Like, what happened the first time I saw her? And it was like years before we dated. I just saw this girl, and I wasn't like sexually attracted to her or anything. I just saw this girl, and it was like, I remember I was walking by a picnic bench, like a picnic table, sorry. I was walking by a picnic table, and she was walking the other way. I was walking this way past the picnic table. She was walking
Money.
this way.
Here
And, like,
comes the
I saw
money.
this girl, and it was like someone's punched me in the chest. I was like, what the hell was that? Didn't really think anything of it. Years later, we met. So that, I don't know how to explain that. But
that was love. That was not soulmate, though.
I think that was soulmate.
That was soulmate?
Yeah, I think so. Right? So I can't explain. So I have read papers upon papers upon papers, looked at hundreds of papers about romance, how you fall in love, neuroscience, relationship formation. There's a great book called the Cambridge Handbook of Personal Relationships. A lot of great research in there. I've never found anything in all of those studies to explain that experience, right? So for me personally, I think there's a fourth variable. So that's different from falling in love. That experience is separate in my mind. So it can start in a few minutes, progress over the course of a couple of hours, and can happen within one day.
Leaves.
Like, there are absolutely stories of people who will meet,
Why
right?
you
And then that
leave?
gets fuzzy, because are we talking about soulmates then? And the number of patients I've had who are like, you know, I saw this person and I knew they were
I
the
technically
one from
don't
the
need the
first moment.
keys.
And I don't know how to explain that, because there's no shared emotional experience. All of the studies that we have about
Lockpick,
falling in
okay.
love don't explain those moments. Now, there are other things that you could say. Maybe it's cognitive bias. Maybe it's misremembering, things like that. I don't think so, man. So then falling in love you can do within a day, for sure. Sometimes longer.
See, there's been one time in my life where I felt like I saw someone and I immediately felt something very deep. We tried talking.
Oh,
for a
I
little
forgot I had
bit,
the upgrade
and-
disc. That would have
and,
been
like,
bad.
Maybe even dated a little bit, but that's it. And then
Oh, what was that like?
I would say it was a lot of emotions probably, because I was always kind of chasing, I felt like. But then years have passed since then, and I feel nothing towards this person.
So it's weird, right? So this is like kind of where I'm coming. Like, I know what I'm saying sounds insane. Like, I get that. But I hear stories like this, and even someone, like, you had this, like, well, how the hell do you explain that? Right? So if we really want to be good scientists, we can't let our preconceived notions about the
Mercury.
existence of soul, or even what science tells us, get in the way of the observations and
Whenever you
experiences that
draft
we
a
have. You
Bedouin,
had an
gain
experience
8
where you saw
steps.
someone and you had
If
a
you have
deep
less than
connection. Like,
10
what the
steps
fuck,
when
right?
you
When
enter
you
this
saw the
room,
person or when you started
set your
talking
steps
to
to
them?
Immediately when I saw
20.
Just,
It's weird.
just
Yeah,
by
and
sight.
I
Whenever
was
you draft
like,
another
you ask
green
any of my
room,
high
2
school
gems
friends,
will
obsessed,
sprout
and I'd
in
never
this
spoken to them.
room.
And then finally I spoke to them, and they only became more and more impressive the more I got to know them. But then it ended up going nowhere, and I chased this person for years. And then since then, several years have passed.
See,
and
sometimes I wonder if it's like a slot machine where it's like their actions are specifically designed to get you to chase and to like be enamored by that, by like being hard to get, or by giving you a little validation, but then pulling it back.
I was
And it's
probably
like,
too interested that it put them off. Realistically,
Well, yeah, I think there's a differential diagnosis.
I feel
there
like
too.
there's
So,
more
like, I don't know
opportunities
if
where
y'all
I
have
would
heard of
use
the term
this.
limerence.
no.
So limerence is like a weird like longing for another person, which is probably something that's more on the OCD spectrum. So OCD spectrum meaning there's a genetic predisposition towards OCD, obsessional thinking, which a certain kind of environmental trigger will trigger that thought process in you. But since the level of
Did I
OCD is so
do a
low, there are
workshop?
only certain circumstances that will really trigger it. Right, so that's another explanation. And like, believe me, like I've looked at a lot of science trying to explain these phenomenon, and I don't think that that's definition of a soulmate. By the way, I don't think that's proof. All I'm saying is that there is a conserved experience that human beings have, where we just see someone, we're like, this is the one, and it's like, what's going on there, right? What's happening in your brain? Like, I don't understand it, because all of the things that we know about falling in love don't indicate random moments of deep connection. Like I've never seen that in literature. And yet it happens to people a lot. So that means that one of two things, either that our sophistication of neuroscience is not good enough to be able to study that, which I think is absolutely true, by the way, or that there's this fourth dimension, right? So the variable could be just really advanced neuroscience that we don't know. There are a lot of people who will believe that. I think that is the most plausible explanation. I also happen to think it's false for other reasons, but does that make sense?
So why do you think that so many high-level entrepreneurs hire you?
So there are two reasons. One practical one and one crazy one. So one is I believe there's a karmic connection. So this is just the way that I view my life. I am on this earth to pay back debts to all kinds of people. I'm deeply, deeply, deeply in debt to all kinds of people. So I believe
Was
it's
that what I
my
was beeping for?
dharma or duty in this life to specifically help some people in a very particular way. And I'm pretty sure, I feel really confident in that. We can get into that if y'all
Are
really
there any
want to.
car shows in Dallas this
The much
weekend?
more
I
plausible
have
reason is,
no
look, man, I
idea.
trained for 7 years to become
Honestly,
I'm a Harvard-trained
Daxton's the one that
psychiatrist.
likes
I'm an
car shows the
entrepreneur in my own
most,
right. I have
or
a
at
really
least so likes
strong
going to
understanding of
them.
things that are very, very
So
confusing to a
I
lot of
just
people.
kind of go to
Right?
things
So the
when
first is that
he
I have a
wants
lot to offer.
somebody to just
The second
go
thing
do something
is
with.
that a lot of entrepreneurs don't so you
Other
were
than that,
talking,
I
we
don't
were
really
talking
go out of my
earlier
way.
about
Car
delayed
people aren't
gratification, right? And
my
I'm going to work really
typical
hard, and then I'm gonna
people,
be
if that
happy
makes
later.
sense.
So what happens with a lot of entrepreneurs
Oh,
is that
fuck.
they assume
I
that
forgot I
happiness is
blocked
coming
myself
later,
out of
and then
that
it doesn't.
room.
And the goalposts keep moving. Because as we discovered, happiness is not from gaining an object. Even if we talk about that for a second, if I desire a cookie, my mind has a lot of mental activity, right? When I eat the cookie, the mental activity goes down. So even though the cookie brings me happiness, I don't know if this makes sense.
I have
Technically, what the
ping
cookie
from
is doing
something.
is stopping my mental activity. It's the stopping of the mental activity that brings you happiness. Does that make sense? And even if I forget about the cookie, if I have a child who really wants a cookie and is crying, and then they forget about the cookie, they'll be happy. So it is mental activity that leads to happiness. So a lot of people will be really successful, but they won't be happy. They did everything in life that they were supposed to do that was supposed to make them happy. And they wake up one day and they're not happy. Then they seek me out because I can help them with that.
Is
So
it
I once had a patient who was
from the
depressed, and I
Great
worked with them
Hall
for about 2
here?
or 3 years, and they came in one day and they said, I haven't gotten better at all. And I was like, what do you mean you haven't gotten better? And I did an assessment. I used one of these validated instruments to measure their depression. Are you have trouble working? Are you having trouble getting out of bed? And he's like, no. So the depression was in remission. And I was like, bro, you're not depressed. You're unhappy. Completely different thing, man. So we select for success. We teach people how to succeed. We teach people how to make money. Y'all do a great job of that. We teach people how to turn $1. Y'all teach people how to turn $1 into 2 or 10. But we don't teach people how to be happy. And it's really interesting because really the spirituality starts with satisfying everything else. So what happened with the Buddha was he was a prince, he was powerful, he had a kid, he had a beautiful wife, he was respected, he had money, he had his health. And he woke up one day and he's like, I'm still unhappy. See, when we don't have everything that we want in life, we can operate under the illusion that getting that next thing will make me happy. What happens to the person who has everything, wakes up one day and is unhappy? Where do they go? Because they have everything. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because I like working with people who are a touch narcissistic or a touch sociopathic. I really love working with them. Like, I feel a really strong connection. I don't think that that's negative at all. It's just part of who they are. Something about the way that I work with them seems to work. And then, you know, they'll let their friends know. And then word kind of gets out.
This gets me into the antechamber.
Like this.
Have you noticed a lot of high-level entrepreneurs or just overall very successful or wealthy people are philosophically or spiritually stunted?
There's two classes. One are spiritually not stunted. They're
Behind?
not behind. They're just not, that's not a part of their makeup, is the way I would describe it. The spirituality is like absent, if that kind of makes sense. The others are spiritually dormant. Huge difference. But yes, I think that they are deeply spiritually unhappy, many of them. And it is part of their path to become financially successful first and then become spiritually potent, which is the tradition that I learned under and the tradition that I hold to. My gurus told me that unless I could become the best in the world, like unless I could
Trophy would have been
succeed very
cool,
highly, become
but
the top 1%
I don't have enough
in the world,
gems for
I would
that,
fail
so
at
I
the
guess we're
spiritual
in
path.
the confidential
When I graduated from medical school, I didn't go to
Basement.
the award ceremony because I never looked at my grades, and I won 2 awards.
treasure map.
It's such a stupid thing to do. I didn't care about grades at all. So I'm a huge
That's gonna be
fan
hard to get to,
of
I think.
becoming materially successful as the first stepping stone to becoming spiritually successful.
What does it mean to be spiritually absent?
In this life, spirituality is not one
What are
of
you
their major
watching?
goals.
It
So
is the
they
Iced Coffee
exist
Hour
on a
podcast
more
with Dr.
physical,
K.
mental, and emotional level. I know it sounds so stupid when I mean, it sounds crazy when I say it, but that's just how it is.
There should be
So,
cards
right,
and
so
coffee
people have different
somewhere. Oh, I'm
aptitudes,
sure
let's
there's
say.
probably
Like,
something
you have
going
an aptitude
Like
for
coins?
art. You have an aptitude. You have a head for
Where do
numbers.
the coins come
Some
from?
people have a spiritual aptitude that's dormant, and some people don't have the aptitude.
So, what are the most common high-level problems that you see for successful people or people
Wait,
that make a
chat,
lot
I
of
didn't
money?
even think of
So those are
this.
two different things, I think, arguably. So, I mean, there are all kinds
Because
of common
I-
problems. So, one of the
Oh
biggest
my
problems
god,
that
I can
have with, like,
draft a room
especially,
here.
more common for men is that when you become really wealthy, one of the simplest problems is you don't know why someone is dating you, right? So like this happens with content creators and stuff too.
I
People want to
need
be your friend. Do they want
to
to be your
buy-
friend, or do they want to be who you are's friend? Does that kind of make sense?
I need to
So there's
get
like iced
back
coffee
to the
hour
commissary so I can
hosts,
buy
and
a
then there's
key.
Graham and Jack, who are just humans.
Fuck.
Whose friendship are
Um,
people really looking for? So people will oftentimes have angles and things like that. That can be really hard to deal with. Really messes up even your sense of self, because you start to reasonably start to think people are looking to you for something. They don't see
Yeah.
the real you. They see some
I just
version
need to
of
go
you.
there.
So that's really common. Also happens to people who are very physically attractive, where they they get picked for their physical attractiveness, not who they are. So some people who are very physically attractive are incredibly lonely, despite the fact that there are people around them all the time, people pursuing them. They can have immense loneliness.
Okay.
Similarly,
3
true
keys.
for people who are very successful. They're oftentimes, probably the biggest thing is intense
No.
loneliness. It's heavy is the head that wears the crown. It's lonely at the top. So it's hard. I think that people don't and I'm not trying to say like, oh, like it's so hard for them, but it's just it's an experience that not many people can relate to. And oftentimes these people also are so focused on their work that they don't water the garden of their relationships. They don't really maintain their social relationships in the same way. So oftentimes they're like really lonely. Sometimes they're really unhappy. Sometimes they feel, eventually we get to a point where they realize they're actually quite out of control in their life. So they're
Peachybunnn, hi,
driven
Prince
by their
Adam.
ambition. They don't control their ambition.
How are
They
you?
can't give it up one day. They are not aware of any other way of existing.
What game are you
except
playing?
for,
This game
like,
is called
striving for the
Blue
top.
Prince.
Could you
It is a
successfully
puzzle game.
gamify
And I've already
life
beaten
in
the
same way that a
main
lot of
game.
these
However, there
entrepreneurs
is a lot
and
of
elite
in-game
businessmen
content in terms
gamify
of
their
more
business to try to
puzzles
maximize
and
profits,
trophies and stuff to
decrease
collect,
inputs,
special
and increase
challenges, all that
outputs. Can you
jazz.
do the same with like your relationships,
So I am
your
just
rest,
working
this,
on
that, in terms of like
doing all of
time
those
blocking
puzzles
everything and treating life as though it's math? Could that be conducive
and
to
trying to
success,
get
or have you
lucky
seen people
enough
try that and it
to
doesn't
be able
work
to
out?
complete all
What
the
do you mean by
challenges and stuff
success?
too.
I would just say overall, like, well-being, peace, is seemingly like a fruitful.
I love puzzle
existence.
games, and this
See-
game has been very, very fun. So I definitely recommend
I
it
think the
if you
answer's
are
kinda yes and
also
no.
into
So-
puzzle stuff.
When you do that, can things get better? Yes. Will they plateau? Also yes. So this is important to understand. A medication can be really effective, right? But the effectiveness of the medication depends on the degree of illness. So people who heavily gamify their lives are starting from a place oftentimes that is like not great in some way. Does that kind of make sense? And gamifying, if you optimize
Dink,
every
I just came
dimension
in
of
to
your
say hi.
life,
I'm glad.
will
Thank you for stopping by.
improve all the dimensions.
You just
that
ate. You had the
optimize.
barbecue.
Does that kind of make sense?
What?
And
What? The
even
ribs,
that can
right?
make-
Barbecue ribs.
give you some
You
degree
enjoy
of
your
peace.
ribs?
But then if you really
hope you
think
did.
about it, there isn't a whole lot of freedom there, right? Because if you choose one day to not optimize, how would you feel about that? What would happen to your mental state? And then are you really in control if the only way you can feel happy is to have all of your life be perfectly optimized? What I would say is that you're actually a slave to optimization. You're even to a certain degree a slave to greed. Because why do you want to optimize? I want to
Workshop.
give one thing and I want to get 10 more. Right? What is that fundamental thing? It's greed.
Compass.
We like.
Okay.
I'm not saying that even
I
in a
can
bad way.
craft
I think it's
probably
like,
so
okay,
many things now.
But I want
So
more for
magnifying
less. What do we
glass
call
and
that?
metal
We call it
detector
efficiency.
makes
It's also called greed.
burning
Or maybe
glass.
there's something else. The other thing is that I find that oftentimes these people are indulging desires. They're, in a sense, victims to desires, but they're victims to a subtler desire.
Can
Right, so they
light
say, like,
candles
oh, like,
and
I'm not going
ignite
to
fuses.
Eat this cookie because it's bad for me. Instead, I'm going to eat the salad. But why am I eating the salad? Because I desire a
A
healthy body.
dowsing
Because I
rod.
desire to be sexy. Because I desire to walk into a room and have people like me. Right? And that's still a
Electromagnet.
desire. So it just becomes subtler in nature. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think you should do what you feel like. And the number of people who come into my office who are incredibly successful, and the hardest work that I try to do is
You
to
are
get them
more
to do
likely to
less.
draw mechanical
And when they
rooms
start
while
doing
drafting.
less,
Automatically
they feel
collect
happier.
coins
Here's the
and
cool
keys
thing.
when
They
entering
also
a
become more
room.
productive, which is really confusing.
Interesting.
What are the problems then that are the hardest to beat for those people?
I think the hardest problem for them to beat is to run against their programming when their whole life they've actually been solidifying their programming. Right? So if you think about someone who's ambitious, this is a good thing. We say it's a good thing. So I think the hardest thing is that
Interesting.
there are things that what they have to get rid of is things that are successful, not things that are failures. I don't know if that kind of makes sense. But even in psychiatry, we say that
I'm going to take a
child
kitchen
development is about abandoning
just to
strategies
buy
that work.
steps here.
So when I throw a temper tantrum, it kind of does the job when I'm 2. And over time, that stops working, but it used to work. So it's really hard for like people to do something that has worked for them and then to be able to let that go, which is exactly what they need to do because they've always been focusing on success. They don't actually have freedom or peace
Interesting.
usually.
How could you tell if someone's going to make a change or not? Are there some signs to look for?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Okay.
this
So
is
I have
actually
one
well
room in the
studied.
house
So
that I
what
wasn't able to
there's
quite
a great
draft.
system called motivational interviewing where you can pay attention to the language that people use.
Can light
So
special
there's something called
candles
sustained
and ignite
talk, and there's something called
fuses.
change talk.
I want to
So
look up
sustained
where
talk
I
is
can
talk
use
that
this burning
indicates
glass
lack of
thing
desire to
because
change. And the
if
funny thing is that
I
sustained talk
I
can
was able
sound
to
positive.
craft it, and
So
if I'm
a good
able to
example of
use
sustained
it,
talk is
That
I
would be
want to
really
change.
cool.
Like that's not indicating that you're actually, maybe that's not sustained talk, but it's
Item,
not indicating that you're planning on
workshop
changing. It's like, I
contraptions,
want this, right? I wish I could change. That's sustained talk. So people, depending on the language that
burning
they use,
glass.
there's certain language that they can use that will indicate a greater desire to behaviorally change. And then there's also a particular technique to shift someone from one to the other. So there are like literally techniques you can use to increase someone's motivation. So that's what we built our coaching program off of that. So what I saw in addiction psychiatry was that worked
Two
really well.
torches
So to get someone
inside
to
the
stop doing
dark
that, you need a
tunnel.
really potent intervention to get them to stop. That's the intervention that we took, and then I was like, this needs to be applied to
Oh
going to
my
the gym,
gosh. There's actually so many
you know,
things.
whatever other
So the
problems you have in life, and
orchard,
that's why
the
we see good outcomes. So
mine,
there's great technique there.
What's been the most surprising thing
the
for you in terms of
trading
running a business?
post, which I don't
So
have,
a
the
couple of things that I
tomb,
found surprising.
the
One is
freezer,
how
the
hard
chapel,
I actually work.
and tunnel
So
area,
people
which
will
I don't
say
know
that
what tunnel
residency
area
is like the
means.
hardest,
Unless
most
it's
work
referring
that
to
you
the
do.
thing
You're working like
outside.
80-hour weeks, but I mean,
Do I
I
have a
work so much
chapel?
harder now. Like I actually had my
I don't
first
have a chapel.
vacation in 5 years.
How
like
did
a
I
week
not
ago.
draft a trap?
So I haven't had a day off
draft
in 5
a
years.
chapel.
And you guys may know this as content creators, but like even when I travel for work, so,
So
for example,
tunnel area
I'm
I
gonna
can
go to this
do.
conference and I'm gonna
The tomb I
do
can
something there.
do.
When I travel
The
for a conference,
orchard I
I still
can
have to film
do.
YouTube videos the weekend before,
And
right? So I have to make
the
I never stop
abandoned
working.
mine I
And
think
even
I
if
can
I have a
do.
vacation, I have to do the work that should be done on vacation before I leave or after I come back. So that was one thing that I was really not prepared for. Thankfully, I have a skill set to where I can work
Which
for
all
5
of this
years without a
seems
day
to
off.
kind of be
So like meditation and yoga
outside
and all that
here.
crap, and like understanding
So I
happiness
might
and
as
the
well
nature of
just
happiness
go
and stuff
through
like that,
the
so you don't really get burned out.
foundation.
I feel really tired,
And I
but I'm
also
not
have to
burnt
pee.
out. I can
So
keep
I'm gonna
going,
go
but I'm
pee.
very tired.
And then I'll be back.
The second thing that's been really interesting is like money. We were really confused for a long time about like how to approach money. So we haven't taken investment. We price products so that people in 121 countries with poor currencies compared to the dollar can afford them. That's something that I feel really good about. And at the same time, there's so much conditioning around being a successful entrepreneur that means that you have a lot of money. So, and I always think it's so interesting how, like, in the back of my mind, an opportunity comes across our table, and it's like, just to give y'all, I mean, y'all know this stuff. So we've had certain sponsorship opportunities, which, you know, we operate fine right now. We're not like in debt or anything like that. We have a small amount of profit. We price our products not to maximize profit. But you know, we're doing okay, and we have stuff saved away for a rainy day and things like that. So in a situation like that, you know, a sponsor comes in, 7-figure sponsorship, and they're like, you can just say yes, and I have to film 3 30-second bits a month, and you just get 7 figures of money. And in those moments, it can be hard because that's just straight profit, right? That's just extra money. You could argue that you could use that money to grow the business, to expand, to help more people. So I think that's what's also really tricky, is that a lot of times people will sort of take money for the greater good, but I think subconsciously it's not really for the greater good. You know, you can justify it that way. That's the way that investors will try to convince you, by the way. Like, I want to give you $1 million. I'm going to take X percentage. We're going to get these dividends. And think about all the people you can help, right? They're not interested in helping people. Sometimes they are, but not usually. So I think it's been really challenging to navigate that and like try to really think about, okay, how much money am I trying to make? Like, is money important to me? Like, there's so much conditioning around it. And I think I went through something like a midlife crisis, and it was awesome. Maybe still going through it, but I think I'm good.
And how did you know you're going through midlife crisis?
So about 6, 8, 10 months in, I was like unhappy for a while and unsatisfied with the direction things were going, and also really conflicted. So when we started HG, basically I was working with all these like entrepreneurs and stuff, right? So people who can pay a lot of money for my services. And I thought, like, I'm leaving my people behind. My people are degenerate gamers.
Had
So I
pulled
started
pork
streaming on
taco.
Twitch
Favorite type of
to
tea.
help all of the people that could not afford my services. At one
What's
point,
your
70%
favorite
of my
type of tea?
patients were free care because it was like my people, 24-year-old college dropouts who like couldn't get help. So it started off mission driven, and then it became a thing. We started getting press, and we started making some money, and then we had to like develop services and things like that. And so then like we became more of a thing and more of a thing and more of a thing. And then it's like, I don't know if this kind of makes sense to y'all, but then you get the trappings of the thing. So we have like an HR department now.
So this is my
we file
guess of the
taxes, and then like, you know, there's stuff
tunnel.
going on with the IRS or whatever. Like you become like a company. And then I started getting confused about my decision making. I was like, I lost the sense of North Star. Am I trying to grow the
Ah.
company? Am I trying to make money? Am I trying to help people?
Always draw a
How do I
tunnel
decide
while
what to do? Do I
drafting
take
in
the
this
sponsorship money or
room.
not? So I just didn't feel good. And then I was like, oh
You
shit,
found a
this is a
secret
midlife
floor
crisis.
plan. Would you like to permanently
This is what
add
they're
tunnel
talking
to
What
your
does that have to
drafting
do with
pool?
midlife?
Yes.
That just seems like a business direction. It doesn't seem to do with age.
Midlife crisis is when you take all the right steps and you end up in the wrong place. So oftentimes what'll happen is like dudes like, you know, I'm happily married and stuff like that. So it's
Interesting.
not like anything's wrong in my life. But I just woke up one day and I was kind of unhappy. And I was looking at my life and this monstrosity
Peachy, of
that we
course.
created. I was looking at my
Peachy.
like calendar. It's like I have all these meetings with like attorneys and with like people in our company. And it's not bad, but I was like, is this what I wanted? I wanted to get away from meetings. Like I wanted to like work with humans, you know, and I like our team. Our team is amazing and I enjoy our meetings. Like they're really productive and they're not like a waste of time or anything, but it's like, is this what I wanted? So you make all the right decisions and then you end up
So,
kind of where you
abandoned
wanted
mine
to end
used to
up.
light the
And then you look at
candles
your
in
life
this
one day and you're like,
room.
am I actually happy doing this? And there's really interesting research that shows that, you know, we construct these ideas of what will make us happy and we invest all those things. And then we wake up one day and you're making these decisions based on your preconception of what the future holds. You think if I wake up in this house and in this way, I will be happy. But then you wake up and it's different from what you expected. So I think there's some degree of like unhappiness, despite the fact that everything is maybe going okay. Or for a lot of people, a lot of my patients, it's doing the best that you can and ending up in a situation that you're not really happy with, where you invested a lot and it didn't work out. Like you're 42, you got divorced 2 years ago, half your net worth is gone, you're getting bled dry through
Abandoned
alimony and child
mine.
support.
That's
You get to see your kids every other weekend, and it's like, what the fuck did I do this for? So I think it's that kind of sentiment of like
accessible
waking up one
by
day
the
and then
tune.
not knowing how you got here.
How did you get out of that, or what was the conclusion that you came to between those two decisions?
First of all, it's developmentally appropriate. So I think one thing that we don't talk about enough is quarter life crises and midlife crises are like part of regular development.
the
So I
north
think
side of the
it's not
reservoir.
a problem. We frame it as a problem. So once I realized, okay, like this is just, it's what's supposed to happen to me. Then what I did was I re-engaged with spiritual practice in a super hardcore way. So for 7 years, I was studying.
So let's
with the
go to
goal
the apple
of
orchard.
becoming a monk and really pursuing like enlightenment.
Peachy, hi,
And
rigor
then
mortis.
I got
How are you?
sidetracked by my wife, by
Welcome,
medical
man.
school, Harvard, success, all that kind of stuff. And I would practice spiritually, but I wasn't like focused on it. It wasn't like my dimension of growth. Then I started doing a couple of like esoteric spiritual practices that were like kind of more hardcore, like kind of picked up
Apple
where I
orchard's
left off.
this way, I
And then
think?
that really fixed it. And so,
So you can ignite the marks
these were
on
some
the
of the stuff where,
sundial
you know
in
how
the
I was
orchard.
talking earlier about physical dimension, emotional
Mhm.
dimension, thoughts, and that fourth thing.
I was asleep
So the
and woke up.
unhappiness
Well,
was
I hope
coming
you had a
from
good
the
nap.
fourth thing. And so you have to explore that and then see where that leads you.
What's the biggest problem that you're dealing with today?
I think the biggest challenge is that when I sit
So
to
here's the
meditate, there
orchard.
are certain practices that are really hard to do that I want to get better at, but they're just
Is
really,
this the
really
sigil?
hard. So there are some states of consciousness that feel like surfing. So if y'all have had like the flow state, you'll kind of know. Like, you know how the flow state like
The marks
cracks?
on the
Yes.
sundial.
So the flow state is like 0 on the scale of 1 to 100. And I mean that technically. It's not even state number 1. It is the preparatory state before you start going up the numbers. So there are some states in some meditation practices that are what I really want to focus on, but they're hard to do. So, and it's hard because like I'll notice that if I have caffeine within 24 hours, I cannot attain a certain state of mind. So the mind is just a little bit too disrupted. It requires like, I'll give you all kind of an example. So the chanting a perfect Om. But a perfect Om is very hard to chant. So what I mean by perfect is when you chant, first of all, your awareness should feel it in the navel, and then it rises to maybe around your forehead. And so if you just chant, you'll notice the vibration move up. But the breath has to be perfect. As you chant quieter and quieter, you'll feel the Om move posteriorly. So you'll feel the vibration up the back of your spine instead of in the front. Most people will feel it in the front. So when you start to meditate in some of these ways, but it's not like I can do anything else. to move it to the back. I don't know if that makes sense. You know, it's a practice of concentration. So I try with my mind to focus, or not mind, but I try to focus as intensely as possible. And if I don't focus intensely enough, it doesn't happen. But I can't focus intensely anymore. I don't know if this sort of makes sense, but you can't force yourself to focus more beyond a certain point, right? None of us can sit down and say, I'm going to read these 300 books from cover to cover. That's very difficult to do. So at some point, my focus gets disrupted. And then the deeper it is, like the deeper you go. And it's kind of like surfing, but like going uphill. And then if you fall, you have to like start over from the bottom, which is annoying. So I know it's weird, but that's kind of what that's hands down my biggest challenge. So hard.
Is there a problem that you're going through that other people could relate to?
I'm sure. I mean, I have kids.
Yeah.
I'm
for the
trying to do right by them.
microchips.
I could be a
Ultimately,
better
on
dad.
like
I want to be working more,
What?
even though I work a lot. I need to be
Microchips.
working a little bit more. I have a couple projects that I'm working on that I really want to devote myself
Microchips.
to.
What would you say are the main things that you've changed your mind over regarding mental health over the years of your professional career?
So I think the first thing is that things are way
I'm so
more
confused.
solvable than people think. So I think we have a system of mental health that is about raising the floor, not reaching the ceiling. So if you look at like SSRIs or antidepressant medication,
Feeling
these are
crappy all
not
day. I'm
curative.
sorry to
It's like
hear
we've
that.
given up on winning the battle and we're trying to just approach things from harm reduction. So even like if I were to say mental illness can be cured,
I hope you have a
I could
better
get in trouble
afternoon
for just saying that. Like even if it's my opinion,
or
but I do
night,
believe
I
it.
guess
And
now.
I think it's hard because what we see in psychiatry are situations systems that are designed to mitigate damage, not help people like thrive and flourish and really fix their problems. And that's not our fault. We're not equipped to deal with that. And that's what's missing. So like what we tried to build is like, as a therapist, it's not part of my job to help someone find a girlfriend. So I literally had this question put to me by a therapist in my therapy training. And they were like, if a patient walks into your office and says, can you help me find a girlfriend? What should you say? And the right answer is, help me understand why you think you can't find a girlfriend. That's what like therapists answer questions with questions. Like, what's important about a girlfriend? Why do you want a girlfriend? What makes it hard for you? And that's like reasonable, but the answer is not yes. And there are good reasons for that. But I think I've changed my mind a little bit over that. I think problems are way more solvable. I think we can use the techniques and our understanding of psychology, psychiatry, neuroscience, psychotherapy. We can use all of these techniques not to fix a pathology and move someone from -100 to 0. We can take all these techniques and move them from 0 to 100. But we don't do that. Like, it's crazy. Motivational interviewing can take someone who's addicted to right? It messes people's lives up. Lose their teeth, lose their jobs, lose all kinds of stuff. We can get them to stop. And for someone who's like struggling to finish their thesis, why don't we use those same techniques to help that person? So I think the two biggest things I've taken away are, first of all, things are way more solvable than we think. The only reason they're not solvable is because we're only approaching them from a very narrow lens. I did one thing that was so small. Started walking with my patients. We would walk outside of my office.
Another one of these
just
boxes.
walk to Boston Common and walk back. Saw such a big effect size change. And we have a ton of research on green space and things like that. So I think there's a lot of things that we don't take advantage of. How would they do if we just all went out and played like Frisbee golf? We took like 10 people with social anxiety. We're going to play Frisbee golf once a week, right? And there's some programs that do things like this, but that's where mental health is really born. So I think things are a lot more improvable than people think.
What are your best book recommendations for people who hear all of this but want to do research on their own or improve on their own? Where do they start?
I have been unsatisfied with books generally. So people ask me for book recommendations all the time. The closest thing is like, honestly, Dr. K's Guide. And the reason it's not a book, but it's like a set of videos and practices and meditations and things like that. The reason that we built it is because I don't think a book is the best way to convey this information, or I don't think a book has been written that provides the information that I wish people knew. So when I wrote those guides, and each one is, by the way, the length of a book in terms of script. But the reason I built them is because I had all these patients, and I was like, if I could spend 10 hours with each of my patients, what would I teach them? That's what's in the guide. If you have depression, here's the 10 hours that I would like, here's the information that I want all my patients to know. If they have trauma, here's how you rewire your physiology, develop your identity, all that. If you have ADHD, here's how you parent, here's how you organize your life, here's how you set goals. And I'm not trying to like cop out there, but I genuinely, the reason I built those is because I didn't see a resource. The reason I started this is because my patients would ask me, what should I read? And I was like, what should I read about spirituality? I mean, sure, you could say the Gita, but you don't, if you're struggling with depression, here's what you need to, I would teach. That's what I would do. And that's in there. If people want a book recommendation in general, Count of Monte Cristo is fantastic.
Allowance
I swear I'm not trying to
token.
just like sell
Yay.
my stuff, but like there's a reason why I built it that way. I could have written a book, but instead I built those guides.
Well, he didn't ask us, but it's linked down below. So if you guys want to check it out, it'll be right there.
Cool. Well,
I mean,
thank you.
it's basically a lot of what we
Yeah.
talked about, just organized based on
Hey,
diagnosis.
listen.
So even the stuff about there's a difference between unhappiness
Hi,
and
in the
depression.
middle of
All the
something.
questions that you guys asked, like half of them are in the guides.
And not an
Like,
emergency.
literally, like the second video is like, how do you tell the difference between if you're unhappy and if you're ill, and what do you do for
key.
each of those branches? Because the solutions are different. That's why depression is so big, actually, is because we try to throw medication at all the sources of depression, but even we have research that existential depression is different, has different solutions.
I'm confused. One more thing I want to get straight. You said you were making more previously than you are today, running the business and all of this stuff?
Yeah,
Previously doing what?
just practicing as a clinician, doing some corporate work.
I thought YouTube would be way more profitable.
How is it not?
Like 10
That doesn't
times
make
more
any
profitable.
sense. Book, the course, the YouTube AdSense,
Two or three
streaming.
things to keep in mind. One is, I think you have to understand that there are some circles where if you provide services, you can charge a lot of money. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, so you were doing
So
really
when-
high
when-
ticket, like
Yeah, so when
Those-
you're like
yeah.
doing some work at Harvard Business School, potentially like co-teaching a class there, faculty at Harvard Medical School, specialized in spirituality, working out of like the Harvard and MIT incubators, you're just part of a world where people have a lot of money. And so if you work for those people, you can charge a lot of money.
what was the average net worth of your clients, of your patients?
Well, remember, 70% of my patients were free, right? But the other 30%,
Not
Of the
including them.
paid,
Yeah.
clientele.
I don't even know. I don't know how to estimate that.
If you
I
were
mean,
to guess, like 100 million plus.
No, I think the average may have not been that high, but I certainly worked with and still work with some super high net worth individuals, like billion plus. And so I don't know how to factor in averages of like, there's like a managing director at like Goldman Sachs or something, like hypothetically, right? So they make maybe like, I don't know, like somewhere, I don't know how much a managing director at Goldman Sachs makes. Do they make 3 million a year, 5 million a year, 20 million a year? Depends on the year, depends on which part of business are they in. Are they in software? Are they in, healthcare? Like it depends. I don't know how much they make. So I wouldn't ask my patients how much they make. I just know that if you're a managing director at like one of the top investment banks, if you're, a CEO of like a major healthcare company, like the comps have to be up there. And I know a
Yeah.
couple people because like their companies are worth a lot and everyone kind of knows that. But now I think a big part of it is that we really don't optimize for profit, right? We really try to keep things accessible.
How many people are on your team?
So we have about 30 to 40 W-2 contractor people who are like back of the house kind of staff sort of thing, like content people, research people, things like that. Partnerships managers, HR, and then 150 coaches.
How many people does it take to run your YouTube channel?
In the past, it's been like 3 or 4. Now we're up to 7 or 8.
Wow.
So one other thing is that 90 cents of every dollar we make goes to people connected to the company. Yeah, I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but like
It
for every
does,
dollar
yeah.
we earn, like 90 cents goes to someone.
You have a
that's
10%
not me.
profit margin.
Not
on
profit
the
margin.
channel.
No, our expenses are personnel. Like 90 cents on every
Right.
dollar
Okay.
goes to the people that do work for Healthy Gamer in some way. And I'm happy with that. I'm not interested in making a profit off of someone else's work. I just don't think that that's like appropriate. So we try
Yeah.
to pay our people incredibly well, which we don't even necessarily do because we're not a super profitable company. But Yeah, so I think that's like a statistic that we're.
How do you balance that with you saving for your family, investing long term, making sure you hit your financial goals as well?
So 2 or 3 things. One is that, I do collect salary, which is like nothing to complain about. It's way less than what I would be making in private practice, but it's plenty to be happy with, right? It solves my problems. I'm contributing to my retirement, all that kind of stuff. I do okay. Like I'm not, I wouldn't jeopardize my children's future for the sake of like saving the world. I think that's not like appropriate even. Second thing is I have side hustles. So I still have like, a lot of like the way that I pay for stuff. I still have a private practice. I still see patients. I still work with clients. And so that brings in like a separate kind of income. So I sort of have like a side hustle, and then I have like Healthy Gamer main job. And I actually really like that. A lot of people will say like as an entrepreneur, you should put 100% into your business. I totally understand that. There's one really interesting downside to that, which is that means I've noticed that when I work with entrepreneurs who do that, their need to make a lot of money out of their company skyrockets. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So if I'm putting 100% of my time into this thing, I'm putting blood, sweat, and tears. I haven't taken a day off in 5 years. When you invest a lot of your time into something, you want a lot out of it. Totally normal. One thing that I found helped me was, even though you could make a very strong argument that if I shut down my private practice, if I shut down my coaching practice and spent more time on Healthy Gamer would do better, would be worth more. I think all those arguments are there. I still don't care. I don't ever want to be in a situation where I want to be financially dependent on Healthy Gamer, because then that changes my incentives. It interferes with the work that I'm really trying to do. So almost it's like stupid from like a entrepreneur standpoint to like divide your time. But for me personally, it helps a lot to have some income, so I don't look at Healthy Gamer and think, oh, I should be like getting more money from this.
It reminds me of like the Jay Leno method, where he was saving all of his money from the Tonight Show, but then doing stand-up, and the stand-up was paying for his living expenses. And so he'd always just do enough stand-up to pay for his bills and then save 100% of the late night.
Yeah, so I think it's something similar in the sense that, and I think also there's the advantage of like staying sharp, right? So I want to like not lose my clinical skills and sit with people, and I enjoy that kind of work. So I think it kind of just works out. And we don't need to be the biggest or the best or the most profitable or the most helpful. Like I'm okay doing a decent job. Like we're here to help as many people as we're here to help. We're not trying to maximize that number. I don't think that that's necessarily the best. Everyone's like, why help 1 million when you can help 2 million? It's like, I want to help these people a decent amount. Like, that's okay. Like, we reach 15 million people a year. It doesn't need to be 30. That's plenty.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, like, why does it need to be higher?
Well, you know what can be higher?
Our subscriber count.
The subscriber count. And the number of likes on the video. So if you're watching this and you're not already subscribed and you haven't already hit the like button, that's free. It costs absolutely nothing. It helps us out tremendously. So
I second that message. Y'all should like, comment, and subscribe. That's what all the people say. Really, this is a fantastic podcast, and I love it.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure. I feel like I need to like sleep for like a long time to digest all of this information.
We're going to feed you first, my friend.
Ooh, I'm starving.
I'm so
Let's go.
hungry.
Let's eat.
Okay. Thank
Thanks
you guys so much
guys.
for watching.
Until next time.
So we did the tunnel. We did the tomb. We did the mine and the orchard. And I think that's everything we can do.
You can take
We did get an upgrade disc,
and you can turn them into something extraordinary.
which means
And
we
if you
need to
take
get
an
to
extraordinary person. What you will find is
What,
that they
security?
have gone through some kind of process to make them that way. You're always using the instrument of yourself. And once you start teaching people those things, you see an astronomical improvement in basically like all dimensions of their life. Happiness, income, life satisfaction. Studied to become
Let's
a
go
monk,
this way.
trained and taught at Harvard Medical School. I'm a clinician. I've done neuroscience research.
Can you cure depression?
The scientific answer is
Thank you very much, Dr. K, Alok, or Healthy Gamer, GG.
Sure.
You came on the Iced Coffee Hour podcast. You do these things where you psychoanalyze other massive creators. You've done it for like Ludwig. You've done it for XQC. Who else? You've done it for Destiny, for all of these people, and they are so fascinating. And I'm noticing amongst like those ultra successful people, they are uniquely special or different in the way that their brain works. Have you noticed this?
I mean, so all these people are outliers, but I think the really interesting thing is that, you know, when I talk to these people, and for the record, I don't psychoanalyze them. Like, psychoanalysis is like 4 hours a week for like years and years and years. That's really what psychoanalysis is. But I think that if you look at, like, generally speaking, human beings, we share a lot. Like, the fundamental nature of the way that our mind works, the way that our brain works, like, we all basically have the same parts of the brain. All of the parts of the brain do the same things. And in some people, the activity levels of different parts of their being, their personality, their brain, call it whatever you want to, are just at different places, right? And so that's what really creates an outlier. I mean, there may be some genetic differences, of course, but I think generally speaking, my experience has been overwhelmingly that you can take seemingly an average person and you can turn them into something extraordinary. And if you take an extraordinary person, what you will find is that they have gone through some kind of process to make them that way. And like, that was the experience of like my life, like absolutely.
So they just weren't born as an extraordinary person.
I mean, so it depends on how you define extraordinary. So like, you can look at IQ, for example, and you can say like all these people probably have super high IQs, but like there are a lot of people in society who have the same level of IQ that, like, let's say streamers have, or people who are very successful. And interestingly enough, there's even some data that suggests that high IQ on the whole correlates with like success up until a point. But if you're very, very high IQ, there's some evidence that suggests that it's actually very hard to be successful.
Is that why gifted kids are often special needs? That was one of your most viewed videos.
Yeah, so this was something that blew my mind when I was in residency training. I had a supervisor one time that told me that, like, you know, gifted kids are like special needs kids. And that kind of blew my mind. And I asked her, like, what do you mean by that? And so she started explaining this to me. And then I sort of realized
the elevator was
that
never
this is what had
called,
happened
so
to
I
me.
can't get
So
down
think about
here
a child who's
properly.
gifted, right? So let's say that you're in like the top 1 or 2% of IQ. The first thing to understand is that your experience of school is going to be very different, right? So kids who are very smart literally have needs that are different from the average kid. So if we look at academics, so that school moves at the pace of the slowest child, right? If we look at our school system, what's it designed to do? Schools are not places where we take kids and we try to have them live up to their fullest potential. Kids are places, if you look at like the mandates around schools, it's about like leaving no child behind. So the system is sort of designed to take the worst performing kids and kind of like make sure they're doing okay. So if we look at like special education at schools, what is special education for? It's for the kids who are struggling, not the kids who are bored. And this is what tends to happen with kids who are super smart, is that they get bored with school. I remember when I was like in the first grade, my math teacher gave me a worksheet and she was like, here's the worksheet. And so I did the worksheet and I walked up to her and I said, like 10 minutes later, I gave it to her and I was like, can I have the next one? And she's like, what do you mean the next one? This is what we're doing today. And so school is incredibly boring. And then what tends to happen is that these kids
Upgrade
start to, like,
disc.
flounder in a lot of ways. They get distracted in a lot of ways. They become
There's 2 upgrade
uninvested
discs in
education.
one run.
The other problem that they run into is that
Mail
if you're a
room.
kid who does really well in school,
Same day
and you're not
delivery.
challenged, you don't develop study habits.
Oh yeah,
So this
same
is a
day
really
delivery.
common problem.
Will be
where
delivered
what
here
happens
after
is
you
you're at
reach
the
your
top of
rank
your
8.
class in the first grade,
No
second grade,
contract
third grade,
delivery. The
fourth grade,
package
fifth
will be
grade, sixth
dropped
grade, seventh
off
grade. You hit high school,
on
and now suddenly
the
you need to
entrance
study.
steps the
And
day
you haven't
after
developed
drafting
any
this
study
room.
habits, and
Okay.
you literally
Freight
do not know
shipping.
how
A
to
very
study.
large
So what
package
you'll
will be
see is
delivered
this,
here
like,
3
tanking
days
of
after
GPA
drafting
for kids
this
who have
room.
high IQ. As they reach the natural point where
No contact is probably
their
the best.
raw intellect is no longer sufficient for
Because then
like,
you don't
learning
have to draft it
calculus,
again.
right? And so these are the kinds of
You
needs
just can-
that kids have that we don't sort of recognize
Another thing.
when they've got high IQ. There's also other kinds of data. So if you look at like
It's a dead-end room, so you don't really want to draft it again.
Depression, about 9.5% of people on a given day will be depressed. If you look at people who are in the top 2% in terms
So-
of IQ, it's 36.6. And so it's like staggering that, like, you know, these kids, while they're gifted in many ways, we sort of think about IQ as just sort of a straight positive, which I think if you have an environment that is conducive to it, it probably is. But taking a smart kid and putting him into an average world is something that is like oftentimes very, very difficult.
Yeah. Do you think that homeschooling is a solution to that?
I mean, it could be, but we have to presume that the people who are doing the homeschooling know how to provide for the special needs of the kid who's super smart, right?
Sure.
One thing that I think is rare that shouldn't be so rare is kids moving up and going down in grades. Because I was just talking to my brother's friend who went up 4 grades in elementary school, and he said because he was so bored that he, like you said, couldn't develop those study habits because he wouldn't need to study for those exams because he could rely on.
So
his
I
raw
need
intelligence.
a
And then once he went up 4
compass
grades, he
and a
actually
battery
hit
again.
the general like IQ of or not the IQ of, but like he would need to study the same amount as his peers, and it actually ended up really positively affecting him for the rest of his life, whereas other people it really hurt.
Don't you think that maybe there's some social issues that affect you, though, if you skip too far ahead and you can't relate to your peers, and maybe you feel like maybe you're a bit of an outsider? Like the kids that go to college, like at 16.
Yeah, so I mean, my brother went to college at 16, so like he's one of those kids. And I think there's definitely some kind of price to be paid, but let's think about the baseline. So how many kids who go to college at 18 fit in, right? Like I'd say maybe 50%.
Sure.
So absolutely there are social changes that there are additional social pressures. And we kind of see this with homeschooling, right? So a lot of parents who will homeschool will be super careful about creating a positive social environment. So they're involved with like extracurriculars and sports and things like that. So I think that it's a fair assumption to say that this person is going to have some kinds of social difficulties. But I think the biggest thing to kind of consider there is that these kids will be viewed differently, right? So they'll have some kind of mystique because you've got a 16-year-old who's hanging out with 18-year-olds, or in the case of your friend, I mean, 4 years is a lot. You've got like a 13-year-old who's just hitting puberty, who's in grades with like 17-year-olds, right? And that's really challenging in a lot of ways, for sure.
Is IQ genetic? And if it isn't, how is that something that you could necessarily measure accurately? Like our IQ tests, do they work?
So there is a part of IQ that is inheritable. So there's a portion of it that is absolutely genetic. We're probably talking about somewhere between like 50 and 70% is my guess. I think we're pretty good at measuring IQ.
I think we've
key thing
kind of
is, like,
done
it's not like,
everything here.
take our IQ test on the
This is
internet.
the
That's what I
first
did.
time when we've been able to open all the
And so
doors
if
in
you
the
really look at it,
antechamber.
like real IQ testing done by
I mean,
like a neuropsychologist
there's
or a
technically no
psychologist
door
is
here
like
because it's
kind of hard to get access to. Like I
a
think
wall,
it's a
but
test that takes
still.
maybe even a couple of hours, and it's sort of like very standardized and stuff like that. The validity of it also depends on it not being publicly available, so people can't like practice for the test. So I think IQ is a pretty valid construct. I think the problem with IQ is that we use it as a substitute for all of these other important constructs that most people ignore. Like EQ is at the top of the list there, where if you look at actually like success in life, EQ correlates more highly with success than IQ does.
What are the differences between the two?
So EQ is emotional quotient. And I kind of think about it as being broken up into a couple different pieces. So this is stuff like self-awareness, emotional regulation skills, even things like empathy and being able to develop relationships. So these are all parts of like EQ. And a really good example of this is you can look at, so what do y'all think the average income is for the top 2% of the population? Top 2% of income earners.
Probably 400 grand.
Yeah, I would say
500 grand.
2%. Oh, is it higher?
No, go ahead. What,
I was going to say
Of the
probably,
world or the U.S.?
I think this is U.S.
U.S. Yeah,
I
I'd
would
say
say probably
400 to 500 is my guess.
350.
Yeah, so y'all are in the ballpark,
Okay.
right? So I think it's somewhere, I don't remember if it was 250 or 400, kind of depends a little bit on, it's actually perfect, like somewhere around 300, 350, which just means, they're all kind of like finance bros, so
Yeah.
spot on.
And my answer is a little closer than Jack's, though.
It actually was not. If we rewind the tape, we'll see.
400 to 500 is my guess.
350.
And while we're taking guesses, Graham, guess how much this super nice, super fancy espresso machine would cost you?
I don't know. It's pretty nice. $200.
If you went with a traditional retailer, that would be the cost. But with today's
I
sponsor,
want
Sonic
to
Power,
watch
you can get
anime.
Really high quality.
And since anime is copyrighted, I'm going to end stream. That is what I'm going to do. Hi, Rigor Mortis again. Welcome. Oh, wait. Sorry, I scrolled up on accident. You didn't say hello again. That's okay. Bye. Yeah, thank you, CRJ, for hanging out. I appreciate that. Let's see here. Stream manager, raid. Is there anyone live to raid? Can I not sort by following? No one's alive. Okay, never mind then. No one else is alive. Or live. They are alive. They're just not live. Okay. Except Dash Ducks. I'm not sure who that is. I'm just gonna end. Okay. Thank you for hanging out. I'm gonna go. I've been watching Sword Art Online again, so I'm gonna go watch Sword Art Online, and yeah. Bye.